to my privilege as a white male came. And that came through a few interactions with the police that I became very aware would have been differently handled if it were not for the color of my skin. That's a problem to me. Due to the rent prices in Nashville, we now live right next to TSU. So I get to experience a community that sees the best and the worst of this problem play out on a daily basis. I've had cops in my yard. I've had cops that I've thanked for doing a good job. I've also had cops that I questioned why in the world they were doing what they were doing. The questioning seems to be something after 9/11 that we weren't allowed to do in this country. And that's why I have an interest in these kinds of bodies. Our city was an example to the country on metros, and I think we could be an example to the country with this. But if this becomes yet another body of people that the police can intimidate and manipulate and cannot properly criticize their actions, then it will not be a good example, and it'll be just more of the same. I've sent a letter to every one of you. I'm not going to rehash that letter here. I am a hard hitter. I pull no punches. And I am not interested in get-along politics and a lack of dissent and debate. And I want to make sure this body has a fair balance of that. I don't expect to show up in a room full of people and have people that feel the same way I do about the culture of policing in the United States of America. But I do expect to be able to have a fair conversation about it with everybody else. And I would say that I would like to see us curve back toward the people being in power. You know, we select leaders like you. We select mayors coast to coast. All these leaders and mayors have failed to call out the problems they see. They seek to get along with these people in far too much of a sense. And you should get along with your police chief. You should also be able to leverage your police chief to solve problems. And we have a great situation here, but it's not like that coast to coast. And let's make an example out of Nashville and do it right. My background, in school I studied communications. I studied the freedom of speech particularly. And this is about more than people getting shot in the back. This is about the fact that we have officers that believe they don't have to listen to free speech as a course of doing their job, coast to coast. There's nothing special about Nashville other than the fact that we handled this job way better until we had 2 people get shot. So we're not really that unique. We have the same problems as everybody else. I think we have a board that might expect to just sit back and wait for a shooting. I don't believe that needs to be the case. I've been on the news this week fighting hard about a school zone being almost completely ignored by Metro Police at our middle school, West End. And my answers, the stonewalling and the blow-off I got from the officer in charge of the crossing guard, as a citizen and a parent, is a great example why a body like this should exist, that somebody could fill out a form and make a complaint to when they feel like they're not getting anywhere. Background with criminal justice, policing. I don't have a lot that goes into the civic realm. But instead, I've hosted events for tens of thousands of people right downtown. And I understand what goes into crowd control. I understand what goes into managing and having a relationship with the people there to control people that get a little bit off kilter, if you catch my meaning. And you have to be able to have a relationship with those people where they understand their boundaries and their limits and who the boss is and who signs the check. I don't think any police force has that kind of relationship in a major way in the United States. They forgot who signs the check. The people do. The mayor does that for us. But I feel like we need more balance. That's why I'm here. That's as much as I've got for these 3 questions. I don't want to beat the dead horse. You guys have been arguably electronically pelted by me, so I'll leave those alone and let you talk to me.
Okay, great. Well, or you talk to us as well, because we may have some questions for you.
Absolutely.
Members, do I have any questions?
Sure.
Okay.
I see where you say that the people must have oversight. And whereas our leaders have failed to take ownership, we must step up and intercede. Can you explain what you mean by that?
My view of this is the Metro Council had an opportunity, really if you dig back long enough, 20 years of opportunity, to do something with this on your own. And obviously you guys hadn't been here that whole time, it's not your fault. History is what it is.
What are you talking about this? Do something with this. You're talking about the
oversight? The concept of oversight, in some form or fashion. It failed repeatedly, and finally the community had enough. And the community did it instead. I view that as an ultimate execution of the frustration of the people. They elected leaders. They hoped those leaders in good faith would do what they need to do. If their experience was anything like mine, they probably had conversations with leaders from the council that said they supported what the citizen thought, and then went and voted with a friend of theirs in the council because of councilmanic courtesy. So the people have now grabbed control of this situation and made something happen that we believe needed to happen by vote.
Are you aware of any efforts that the council did to put together something like this?
I've seen it play out repeatedly through the media, and I've seen it fail to get passed. Various stages, first, second, or third reading, I don't really care where it failed. The idea that it failed, the idea that the people needed to take it into their hands, is a sign to me that we needed to flex a little muscle as voters.
Aware of any efforts beyond that?
Oh, I'm sure plenty of efforts, but this effort is a result of the council, in my opinion, at a peak time of frustration among people, not getting it done, at a really hot time.
Any other questions from my other folks?
So appreciate you being here and expressing strong views. And the people have created this process, which I think will be very successful. Polls over the years, though, have shown a lot of confidence and in the police department. As the most respected institution in the community. Just if you would comment about that, is the polls wrong, or is it a broader problem, or is the job of this group going to be to focus on those relatively smaller instances of dissatisfaction?
I've covered it many times in my conversations because starting at Ferguson, I got unfiltered and public about what I had to say about this issue. So there is a minority of bad in the policing profession. Everyone should be able to agree to that. The problem is the majority of good, that's not acceptable. We had to put constructs in place for the good cops to criticize the bad cops, to out them, to turn their backs on them, and let them go through the justice system like any other citizen. And I believe you are correct. The minority is the problem. But the majority aren't speaking up about the problem. It's the same thing as those of us wrestling with toxic masculinity. It's the same as any other problem. If the good guys don't say anything, then the bad guys keep getting away with it. Now, polls, I think you guys are in the political business. You know that polls are probably not the best thing in the world we have going for us right about now. And I don't know in my neighborhood if you're going to get a lot of results from polls. I don't think you're going to get a lot of the stories on the ground from neighbors. You know, I live between two very wise older women in their 60s. They grew up in the house they're in. I consider it a blessing that they are there. I learn a lot from them. But their view is measured. Their view is measured because of their life experience. They've seen the good and the bad. And by all means, there are good. We don't have a system and we don't have a professional environment where the personalities that seek to abuse it are properly eliminated. And as I said in the letter, we can't do any of what we're talking about right here while we're insulting these people with a $39,000 salary. They deserve far more. But in our culture as it stands now, I've seen the degradation of various conversations that we have sociopolitically after 9/11, and I believe, whether you want to conspire that it's on purpose or not, the net result from 9/11 was that we became unwilling to question first responders. And no agency and no group of the government is beyond reproach or question.
Okay. You've got less than 2 minutes left. Is there anything, lasting thing that you want to leave with us on your exit?
That's always bad for my big mouth, but I'll give it a try.
But just know I don't want to be rude, but when the time
absolutely,
hits,
no, I understand this process. You know, my biggest observation in any issue that comes before Metro seems to be that we forget that we're an infant of a city. It's 50 years of Metro here. That was basically when we got our act together, right? 50-ish years ago, we decided, okay, let's make this make some sense. And then the rest of the country said, hey, they're onto something. We have a chance to do that again, but we also have the chance to form something that's more diverse in its opinions than a lot of the other things we see. And a lot of the boards we have in this city are very, very slow curves to change. If you don't like the way certain things are managed in this town, one mayor can't even make a difference because they don't get enough appointments in enough of a period of time to make a difference on the people that hire and fire the guy that's the boss. So we have a lot of areas where we protect the leaders of different subsets of our city structure. And in this, I would love to see it get off the ground with balance, because as it makes its own rules, it needs to make rules that are much more flexible and much more immediate. Because this phone in my pocket is going to record and broadcast that police beating faster than a board can change, if it changes like the Parks Board and such and such.
And they are coming in, so I want to say thank you so very much for sharing with us, sir.
Thank you all for your time.
Have a wonderful afternoon.
And thank you guys for being here as well.
Oops.
Oh,
I'm sorry, I was so locked in, I didn't even notice.
okay.
Hi, how are you doing?
We're doing well, thank you. How are
Oh my
you?
gosh, I am so fine. You have the 3 questions that we sent you? That we asked you to discuss with
I
us
did
today?
not bring my copy, but
But
yes.
as long as, and you don't have to go straight down, however you want to discuss it, you'll have that time. And talk until you finish, except if the time comes and I'm gonna stop you. But if you finish before that, then we'll have some questions for you.
Okay.
And you can run it however you like. Go ahead, ma'am.
Okay. Well, one of the reasons I was interested in serving on the community board was because I just felt like I'd have a very objective perspective. I am from the north. I'm not from this area, so I don't have a lot of the history with some of the issues that have happened here between the black and the white communities. I do have some experience working with them as a community leader. I've been a community leader for about 24 years. I have worked in 12 South. I worked extensively with Metro when I was working in 12 South when we purchased our first home, and we worked to revitalize the community and bring it back and reclaim it from the crime that was taking place there. And many of you have probably lived here a long time, realized that the commercial district was dying. There were maybe 3 or 4 vital businesses there, and now it's back to a walkable, livable community, which is very exciting. So I feel like that my community experience gives me a unique perspective. I've worked with a lot of people. I also work with Neighbor to Neighbor, was formerly Neighborhoods Resource Center, which is an organization that's been serving neighborhood communities since 1997. And I have been involved with them almost the entire time in various roles. I was a recipient of their services in 12 South. They asked me to be a spokesperson for them, for their grants, and then I became a volunteer, a board member, and now I am a full-time employee, and I love the work that I do in communities, so I just feel that that's a unique perspective. I wouldn't say that I have a significant experience with civil rights, but I do with equity when we're talking about the work that we do in the community. And when we're serving our community, we have to look at everyone's needs and everyone's desires for what they want in their community, and we have to take that into perspective or into consideration when dealing with them through neighbor to neighbor. So I do have that background there. And as far as criminal justice and policing practices, I've worked very closely with Metro Police through all of my community work. When 12 South was initially in West Precinct, we had to work very closely with the community coordinator back there. We had to set up drug deals and stings, and so we had to be very involved with telling them who was doing the drug dealing and what they needed to do with regard to, well, not what they needed to do, but where they needed to go and what homes they needed to investigate. We worked with them to help clean up the petty crime that was going on. We also worked with, this is sort of a side piece, but we worked with Neighbor to Neighbor to do the city audit, which involved a lot of work with the police. So we had to identify problem areas that the police needed to address, which there were a lot of things they needed to do in 12 South. All in all, I think when our audit was done, there were 3,000 issues that we had identified, and that's everything, from soup to nuts, from the crime issues and suspicious activity to issues with the alleys, garbage, public works, missing street signs, broken street lights, so that was everything. So that's what I would say is my background.
Okay. Well, we're going to have some questions for you,
Okay.
and I actually would like to start. Could you talk to me a little bit about the sense that you think when I say equal treatment and equitable treatment?
Well, that's an interesting question. I think I don't think they're the same. I think equitable has to do with the situation. And equal is not always the best thing for everyone. I think that different circumstances require different approaches. And that would come into the equitable piece, that you're going to address each thing in an equitable manner, but equal is not always the same for everyone. So.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions?
I just might expand on your relationship with the police department, and I was married at the time my wife worked out there when it was like you described. She actually was mugged and shot at once. She worked in the building that now occupies Ed Lee's restaurant.
Right.
Alongside the Howells, who really were responsible for developing it. In fact, Andy Howell once told me, he said, "You don't believe what it's going to look like in 5 years." And I said, "No, I don't believe that for a moment." It's unbelievable how it's transformed, though it really is.
A lot of work.
But it sounds like you're dealing with the police department is mostly providing information to help them in the neighborhood transition. Is that right?
We have, yes, but we also, with neighbor to neighbor, we work with them in different manners. Like we have quarterly leadership breakfasts where we work with them. They come in and they may talk to our community leaders. And I work with practically all the COCOs, so they don't like to be called that, community coordinators, throughout the city. Normally I would just work with them in my neighborhood. I mean, now I'm in Caldwell Abbey Hall, so I'm in the Midtown Hills. I work with Sergeant Coker, and but through my work with neighbor to neighbor, we work with them in different capacities. Whatever's required in whatever neighborhood we're working in.
So I've got one more question, if you don't mind, Madam Chair. Is that what motivates you to want to be on this board?
I just feel that my experience in the community would make me a good person to do that. I really want to serve the community more. I love the work that I do in my paid capacity, but I also love the work I've done as a volunteer, both with 12 South and now with Caldwell Abbey Hall. I'm also the president of Caldwell Abbey Hall for another few months, and then I'm going to pass the torch on to someone else because it's time for some other leaders to take responsibility. But I just really want to serve the community in a more significant manner.
Any other questions?
Well, thank you, and I'm so impressed with your community work. The work of this board, I think, is going to be often conflicting testimony, and obviously officers are going to feel like their career is on their line, and the citizens are going to feel that they have a whole lot to say. What in your background, do you have any kind of experience in evaluation of evidence and testimony and conflict and I'm not saying that's the only thing this board will do, but I imagine it certainly that'll be a big part of it.
Well, I have to a very lesser degree in my community work when you're dealing with neighbors who are having disagreements and they bring it to the community meeting and you have to sort of mediate and find a common ground. I don't know that I haven't done anything with so much at stake as would be with this board, but I do think that I can be an objective individual. I'm not going to come to this with preconceived ideas of one party is right and one party is wrong, and I think that I can look at it very objectively. I had a very good friend of mine who is a federal marshal, and we were talking, and he was saying, you just don't know what will happen until you're in that situation. And you can't judge.
I'm so sorry for
from the
cutting
outside.
you off, but your
Okay.
time just went to zero, so.
I appreciate your comment.
Thank you so very
Thank
much
you
for
so much.
coming in.
Very much. Thank you.
Have a wonderful afternoon.
Hi there.
Thank you.
Ms. C? Hi, how are you doing?
How you doing?
I am fine. Please have a seat. You have the 3 questions that we sent to you that we wanted to hear about?
Oh, yeah, I got them.
Okay. So you can answer those any way you want, one at a time, or smush it all together. It doesn't matter. It's kind of your show. You will have the 10 minutes to talk. Excuse me. And if you finish what you're presenting to us before then we will have some questions for you.
Okay.
So it is now time. You may start when you are ready.
I really forgot which number of questions.
Well, that's okay, because guess what? I've got this that you can have a look at. And you don't have to go 1, 2, 3. You can any way that you want to answer those. And if you want to, since it's running your time, you could just start by talking about why you're interested in serving on this, and then give some about your background around civil rights and equity issues and the criminal justice, and just kind of talk to us about that.
Okay. Well, for one, I filled the application out because you're looking for honest people, and I'm honest person. Not only am I an honest person, I serve my community well. I was a part of having the Meharry Matthew Walker Center on Jefferson Street by being a part of the grant years ago. And present, I own a nonprofit organization named it after my husband. He was a district chief for the Metropolitan Fire Department for 34 years. I'm a 501c3. I've had it for 3 years. I give scholarships to Fire Academy young men and women who are interested in fire science or emergency management. My nonprofit organization also give scholarships to high school students who's interested in the same, emergency management or fire science, because that's what my husband would have wanted. My background, I have a master's of arts, and I have studied in mediation. That's what I do. I'm a mediator. I received my master's in 2016, and as of yet, I haven't had any mediation. Nobody had wanted mediation, but I still read and keep up on my mediation through family and or religion at my church. That's my background. Civil rights and April tell me I'm 60 years old. I was born in the 50s, so I'm familiar with civil rights and that, things such as that. I said before, I'm an honest person. My relationship with the police department was one years ago, about 25 years ago. I had got into some trouble about 25 years ago, and they done their job, and they done their job well. I have no criminal record, and I just like doing work for the community. I don't get paid. I've always done volunteer work. And that's just about it. And if you just give me a chance, you know, I can show you what I can do.
Okay. Well, we're going to open it up now for some questions, and I'm going to start with the first one. You talked about you had some mediation training. You haven't actually formally used it. So tell me, how do you think you would use that training, or how would that help with this commission?
Well, this commission, what would happen is we would go into research to find out, you know, what happened. You would look at it really as a case study. And, you know, together we would look at the case and, you know, take notes, highlight it, come back together and talk about it, and focus on the analysis and the identity, having 2 or 3 key problems. We'll come together and, you know, uncover possible solutions. That's how I would look at it.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions?
Yeah, I've got, thank you, Madam Chair. Just a couple. Tell me what you understand the role of the Community Oversight Board to be.
To speak for the community when we have a matter at hand. If one of the police officers have to or tend to shoot one of the civilians, and we'll have to come together and see whether or not they done the right thing, or they did not do the right thing, and pass it along to the mayor, I believe.
You just as a follow-up to that, I see where in your questionnaire you mentioned a lot about police shootings, and in my research of some of the community oversight boards, some of the most challenging thing for the board is to get people to show up, because quite frankly the overwhelming majority of the things that come before the board are not police shootings. So that being the case, are you planning on being fully committed to a board, if you were so chosen, to look at all the things that are not so, not quite as inflammatory as a police shooting?
I am, and I'm also willing to travel.
Okay.
At any time.
I'm sorry, Madam Chair, I don't mean to dominate the time, but
It's okay, you got less than 2 minutes.
Okay, one other question. You mentioned.
Did anybody else who hadn't had a question?
He actually
Okay,
asked
go ahead, sir.
And one other question, could you explain the attempted murder charge that you referred to in your questionnaire?
Yeah, that was over 25 years ago. My brother had beaten my mother in the yard, and one thing led to another, and that happened, and I'm sad that it happened, but it happened. And like I said, they done their job, and they done their job well. I spent no time. It lasted a whole year as far as back and forth going to court, found not guilty, and I do not have a record. It was expunged, but I'm transparent.
Yes, quite clearly, and I don't mean to put you through that.
Oh, that's okay. I'm transparent. I don't mind.
So we want to thank you so very much. You've got just a couple of seconds left. If there's anything that you want to leave with us right quickly.
Well, not really. Just
Okay.
just want to have a chance to be a part of something very important, you know, like this. This is just it just would be another volunteer thing that I do. I don't care about the money.
Great.
Even or nothing.
Well, we want to thank you all, because this was something coming here and sharing with us and sharing your information and everything with us. So we want to thank you so much for coming and hope you have a great afternoon.
All right, you too. Thank you.
Thank you, dear. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Yes. Hi there, Ms. Hamer.
Hi, how are you?
I'm fine. Okay, you are familiar with the 3 questions that we sent you that we wanted to hear from you on?
Yes,
Okay, so you are going to have your time. You can present those any way that you want to. You have 10 minutes. If you finish talking before the very end of the 10 minutes, then we will have some questions for you. And please excuse me, but when the time hits, I'm going to cut everybody off. But right now, guess what? It's 1:30 and it's your time.
okay. I'm not very long-winded. I'm short and to the point. Okay. My interest in serving on the Community Oversight Board is that I wanted to help develop a conscientious and a substantial relationship between the community and the Metro Nashville Police Department. I believe I can bring forth an impartial input and constructive criticism, and I'm able to help make sound decisions in order to, without being swayed by either party, I can make sound decisions. A little bit about my background. I've worked with the Department of Human Services, and I've supervised the Families First food stamps and the training units. And I've also acted as a liaison between the community and the department. My main duties were to help protect and enforce both sides, to be impartial, because our department was not always correct, nor was the community always correct. And I felt I worked in the capacity as a liaison, and I know that I can produce fair treatment no matter the race, creed, ethnic, or religious background of the person. Let's see. My experience or familiarity with the criminal justice policy practices. I had to enforce policy with the department on a daily basis, and I also was instrumental in helping write policy for the Department of Human Services and to update old policies. I've also worked with our investigative unit to ensure that fraud did not take place, and I was also worked in the capacity of firing people if they did commit the fraud. I had no problems in making sure that the justice was served correctly.
All righty then. Well, let's open it up and see if any of the committee members have questions for you. Anyone?
I actually have one.
Yes.
With your experience in terms of policy oversight and ability to write policy, do you see that as an asset, being that this is something new for the city? Do you think that would be integral in being able to help create a concise approach to and eyes looking at policy that's existing?
Yes, I think that would be an intricate part, because it's very important that the board, whoever you put on the committee, that we get the proper training and that the policy is known and instrumental in following through on it and enforcing it. And
Just real quick follow-up, same line. That being the case, would you have any problem with bringing forth or pointing out any policy issues that you may see from how the city currently is operating, so that we can make some adjustments in that regard, separate from this particular board? So if you recognize a policy issue that you think may have contributed to an incident, would you be okay with bringing forth that information so that we could adjust and look at it also?
yes, I would. And also, you know, it's important that policies are amended at interval times, because everything changes. You know, nothing stays the same. So it's always that we need to stay on top of it and look at the old policy, see what's working, what's not working, what needs to be amended, what doesn't need to be. And some parts of policy may need to even be alleviated. You just never know. But we all need to stay abreast of all the policies and make sure they're implemented fairly and justly.
Thank
Any
you.
other questions?
Thank you. By the way, is it Hamer or Hamer?
Hamer.
Hamer, okay.
I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Oh, that's all right. I've been called everything from Hamilton to.
Part of the job for the committee members is clearly going to be outreach back to the community, I think, to inform and communicate back with the committee their work. Would that be something that you would embrace also? Not only the judicial and being fair, but also liaisoning back to as much of the community as possible to make them feel included in the activities of the COB.
Yes, it would. I represent the department with the mayor's very first one-stop shop when we were housed in the Martha O'Brien Center. And during that time, you know, we brought to the community there within the Martha O'Brien area. They were able to come in and have Metro Social Services, Department of Human Services, the food bank, everything at a one-stop shop. And a lot of times if they couldn't make it in, that I did home visits to their homes to make sure that everything was turned in and that they had a fair chance of getting all the benefits that they were required to receive.
Any other questions? Okay. Well, you have about 3 minutes before your time, so is there anything lasting that you want to leave with us on your exit?
I really hope that you consider me for the position because I know that I can give a fair and impartial voice and that I just think I would be an asset with my experience on being on both sides of the desk at one point at a time of your life. So.
Well, thank you so very much. You be careful going home and have a wonderful afternoon.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, I just want to say a quick to my committee. Be careful when you are talking, when you're explaining what you want to say, because sometimes that takes up more of the time than them answering. So just, yeah.
We have 2 minutes anyway. I'm just.
Oh, yes, we're good. Yes, sir. Thank you. So I just kicked up my allergies. Oh, don't try to, I can't spell.
I'm just observing who I was not able to. You too?
There is a snack bar in that first house. Another room. I saw a bunch of things.
Yeah, I know.
So I think, yeah, and yeah.
I actually packed myself a little bit and I will be free. Just ate it with me.
Okay, so that person must not be here.
Oh, it's right.
Oh, yeah, they kicked up my allergies.
That's a root beer.
Sponsored by.
Root beer. Would you like some fancy root beer? Well, there we go. Yes. Saturday afternoon.
Amen. Thank you, thank you.
Started today at 4 a.m.
Was that?
Started today every day at 4 a.m.
Oh, that's in there.
Jam.
I'm up at 4. I hit the treadmill or the elliptical, and then I'm out by 5:30. But all morning, I've been rain. I had 2 water main breaks.
Oh, no.
Plus a lot of flash flooding.
Oh, no.
Hi there, Miss Coleman-Robinson. How are you doing today?
I'm great. How are you?
I am fine, thank you. You are familiar with the 3 questions we asked you to bring?
Yes.
Okay, you'll have 10 minutes to speak. You can do it either way you want, and if you finish before the end of 10 minutes, we will have some questions for you. How about that?
That's good.
Well, guess what? It's your show now.
Okay, the reason why I wanted to serve on this committee, I want to make a difference. I'm very fair, and I think everyone needs a fair shake. And I listen, and I listen to everything. And my thing, in order to make Nashville a better place, we have to have an open mind. We have to be fair. My background, I retired from the state of Tennessee in mental health and mental retardation. I kept foster kids that was at juvenile and deal with them pretty well. I participated in the civil rights movement when I was in the 9th grade. I understand the whole context of it, but I think all in that, everybody need to have equal rights, regardless. And on this committee, one more reason why I volunteered, I wanted to make sure that it wasn't any bias on this committee. I want everybody to have a good opportunity, a fair chance. And my experience with criminal background, like I said, I worked with juveniles at one time, kept keeping them in my home. And you'd be surprised when you work with people that have criminal backgrounds. You have to listen to whence they come. A lot of them are not educated. And when they find someone that believes in them, sometimes they can be turned around. I know that, for instance, that the police chief, not giving him any cookie, he takes everybody down to the civil rights. Anybody can join. To look at the civil rights movement, to let them know how Nashville came, how far Nashville came, and how far Nashville got to go. And I'm through, and I'm a member of TSEA, Tennessee State Employees Association. I am the secretary. So boards and stuff, I am very familiar with. I'm through.
Okay. Well, let's open it up and see if any of our committee members have any questions for you.
Sure. I have one. Just indulge me for a moment. I'm always fascinated by people who are involved in this, and you had mentioned that you participated in the sit-ins in the 60s. And I do think this was relevant, so can you tell me a little bit about that?
Okay. I was in the 9th grade. Mm-hmm. I was a member of Meigs High School, and they came over the bridge. What happens then during the sit-ins, they ask a lot of high school students to participate. They talked, we went across the bridge. We met at the old First Baptist Capitol Hill. And Martin Luther King was there, and that was his church, and they gave us instructions how we would go out to the different places. This was some youth, they broke you up. And the nonviolence. What impacted me, my father was Reverend Henry Edwards. He was head waiter at Andrew Jackson Hotel. And my parents gave me permission to participate. And it was very important to me to have that experience, sitting in and listening to things that I wasn't accustomed to listen to. And the reason why I said that, my father was a head waiter at Andrew Jackson Hotel. He ate his breakfast every morning at Crest, at the counter. They let him. So this was a whole different side that my parents let me experience. And by me experiencing that, it made me a better person. And I can pass that on to my kids and grandkids because it's very important for me to educate them. And in my family, I have a rainbow of color. And I appreciate that fact that my family, we welcome everybody in because you can be anybody you want to. It's what you are inside. But like I said, the civil rights movement was a great lesson to me, and I think everybody should, learn that experience, and make them a better person too.
Well, thank you for sharing that with us.
Any other questions?
Thank you so much for being here. I just was gonna ask about your own history with the police, and in your own life, your own rich life experience, have you, just your interaction with the police and...
I'm very interactive. Like I said, I kept juvenile. These are kids that, for one reason or another, had committed crimes, and they, giving them a second opportunity. Out of all those kids I kept, none of them went back to the juvenile system. And a lot of times when you keep these kids, and sometime, every now and then somebody's going to make a mistake. My thing was, this is funny, every time they would catch one, I said, well, maybe they won't bring that one back. But the police would always bring them back to my house and say, you're doing better than most. Continue doing what you're doing. They having a second chance. And with the police department, that's how I interact with them. And I have had some criminal justice and some law studies when I went back to school.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Well, you have a little under 4 minutes before your time, so is there any lasting words you want to leave with us before you exit?
Yes. Like I said, the reason why I choose this is because I want everybody to have a fair opportunity, everybody to be treated fair. I want this board to be one of no partiality. And I want everybody to have an open ear, because if you don't, you do not make rash decisions. And this committee is so important that people have to make those impartial decisions and fair decisions. And with my background, I believe I can do that, because I'm very open-minded, and I'm a little outspoken, and I'm going to say exactly what I think. But in the end, I can come to a consensus and be fair to everyone.
Okay, well, thank you so very much, and we really appreciate you coming and sharing with us. And you have a great afternoon.
And
Thank
you
you so
do the
much.
same. Thank you, and
Thank
thank
you.
you all for listening to me. I'm getting old. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
It's just the opposite of housekeeping. Katie Blake.
There's 40 of us.
Which is great. It's kind of just like it's great. All right, so that'd be great.
They're trying to maintain transparency and impartiality. Everybody wants their guy, their person on.
You have a seat right here in this chair. Thank you. My name is Lewis. How are you doing?
I'm good, how are you?
I am fine, thank you. Are you familiar with the 3 questions that we sent you to share with us?
Yes, I am.
Okay, you can share those any way you want. You've got 10 minutes to do that. And then at the end, if you finish talking before the 10 minutes is up, then we will have some questions for you. So now it's
All right.
your show, and however you'd like to bring it.
Okay. I typically end up finishing early, so you may have some time for questions.
Okay.
I think I'm just going to answer all 3 sort of as a gamish together, if that's okay.
Oh, sure.
So I think this board was established really in the interest of transparency, impartiality, and trying to be free of bias. And I think a lot of the applicants that you're going to have for this are going to be somewhat segregated on one side or the other. They voted for it and were passionate about it, or they voted against it and were passionate about it. And that kind of also breaks down to the personal and the professional too. And I feel like I can posit myself as someone in the middle. I am a forensic pathologist by training, which means I'm a medical doctor who conducts death investigations and autopsies. And so I have testified in court hundreds of times. I'm used to looking at disturbing photographs and videos. I'm used to looking at photographs of injuries and then explaining them to a lay audience. I have done autopsies on in-custody deaths, and some I have ruled homicides at the hands of the police. Some I've ruled suicides, some accidents, and some naturals, so really all of them. And as a forensic pathologist, one of the things that we really strive to do is to be cognizant of any inherent bias that we may have. So we try, and that's what we strive for, is total impartiality. Of course, no one can be totally impartial, but we're very cognizant of that, and I keep that in mind in my professional life. As far as my personal life goes, I am not one of these community activists who is a neighborhood organizer by trade. Again, I'm a forensic pathologist, I'm a doctor, but I do worry about my children who are brown. My son is adopted from Guatemala. He's pretty seriously mentally ill. And so I have concerns about any future interactions that he may have with law enforcement or the police. I think that's a very real and serious possibility for him, and try to discuss that with him. He's only 14 right now and doesn't understand things that well, but I tried to do that. So I feel like as far as law enforcement experience, obviously I've worked with the police. Usually when I testified in criminal court, it would be for the state, but I certainly had no problem telling the police when their theories were wrong. I had one police-related shooting where the TBI agent was trying to convince me that the person had not been shot in the back, and I said, no, you're wrong. This guy was shot in the back. The scenario you're positing to me is not plausible. So I'm not afraid to do that. I have no problem doing that. So I guess that's about it. I just want to tell you a little bit about that and how I feel like I'm a person that could be kind of in the middle, and again, used to dealing with these kinds of things. I'm not your average white chick from District 23, I don't think. So any questions you have for me, I'm happy to answer.
Okay, so we're going to open it up for questions, but I have one. Talk to me about your dealings with any civil rights issues then.
So I did autopsies in Mississippi for a couple of years too. And I had 2 cases that stand out in my memory. One was a white supremacist, known white supremacist person, who was shot by a young black man after he had made a proposition to him. And that actually ended up in a book called God Will Cut You Down, if any of you are interested. And so, obviously that was very racially charged and emotionally charged. At the time of the autopsy, we had the police there, of course. Everybody was very interested in that. And then the other one that was even more vivid to me was there was a high school senior, a black boy, who was dating a white girl, and he got pulled over at a traffic stop in the early morning by the police, a white policeman, and the boy ended up being shot with a shotgun that he had been carrying in his truck. And so the question was, obviously, did the police shoot him? Which gun was he shot with? Was he shot with a police gun, or was he shot with his own gun? did his own gun misfire, we had to test the weapon and make sure that it was functioning properly. And there were several hearings over that, so you can imagine down in South Mississippi how that was a very delicate situation to be handled.
A lot of people have been coming in here, and I guess this is the first thing to think about is racial. Have you had any experience working with any gender or, and I'm going to use the wrong word, but those type of things? Or
I have. I've done some activism as far as abortion rights. I would have been at the women's rally. I didn't realize it was all going to be at the same time here. And of course, I came up, I initially trained as a general surgeon and a trauma surgeon at Vanderbilt. And that was a very good old boys club. And so I'm very cognizant of gender biases that continue in my own life. And, you know, we'll have big meetings at my office now where we are, and you'll get mansplained to, and people will talk over you, and you'll have an idea, and then a man will have it 5 minutes later, and it's a great idea. So, yes.
Okay. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
You know, you and I share a little something in common here. I'm also the parent of a racial minority child who has a disability. So I would like for you to share with us a little bit about the perspective that gives you that you would not have otherwise.
Does it ever? You know, both from the special needs perspective, because we were not anticipating a special needs child, and actually we were crazy. We adopted 3 toddlers at the same time, twin girls from China and a boy from Guatemala, and now they're all 14 years old. So we were not anticipating that he would be special needs. He had a lot of early childhood neglect and has a lot of ADHD issues and reactive attachment issues. And so, but he looks normal, so people expect him to behave in like a regular person his size should behave, and he can't do that. He can't regulate himself enough for that. And like I said again, he's quite dysregulated at times, and that combined with being Hispanic appearing is just a setup for something bad to happen. I mean, that's the reality.
Thanks for sharing that.
Anybody else?
Well, given your experience of investigation and fact-finding violent cases, what's your feeling about the internal processes in police departments? You've got experience in Mississippi and other places, and how effective the current internal processes are in this, and thus the need for this separate board.
Right. I mean, I think we're seeing that those internal processes probably are not functioning as well as they should with the vote that brought about the creation of this board. I work for the state government, and so I think transparency in government is a wonderful thing, and I really am an advocate for transparency in government, but that doesn't mean I like it when my emails are in the Tennessean. But I do think that we need to take a closer look at the internal policies of the police. I don't obviously know what their internal policies are, but I think there's a lot of room for improvement, and that's demonstrated by the presence of this board.
Anyone else? Well, you have like less than a minute.
Wow.
So is there anything pertinent that you want to leave with us on your exit?
I think I spit out most of what I had to say. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much
Appreciate
for
it.
coming to share with
Yeah.
us. And it's nasty out there, so go join the march, but be careful.
There was one thing. One other reason I wanted to join this board was for selfish reasons and to meet some people from other demographics that I'm not usually around. Get some insight into their experiences.
Thank you so very
Thank you.
much. You have a great evening.
Madam Chair, is it 9, or is the council electing 9 members on Tuesday?
No.
That's my understanding. There's 7 committee members and 2 council members, but I believe the council is really responsible for electing them.
Okay. And so it's 7 from the community.
Right. And we're not nominating for.
Hi, how are you doing?
I'm good, and you?
I am fine. Ms. Clemmons Lee or Ms. Lee?
Ms. Clemmons Lee is fine.
Okay. You have the 3 questions that we sent you?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so you can come and you can talk about those any way that you want to, and we'll let you talk. It'll be your show when the 10 minutes is up. If you finish talking before the whole time is up, then we'll have some questions for you. And so it's your show now. You can go ahead and get started.
Good afternoon. My name is Sheila Clemmons Lee. I am the proud mother of Jacquelyn Clemmons, who was murdered February 10th, 2017. I also have 3 beautiful daughters and grandchildren. I am a caregiver, so I love helping people, taking care of people. The people that I take care of are disabled, high-functioning young men. I come from a large family. I come from a praying family. And that's one of the things that I truly believe in, and that's the power of prayer. I believe that when you put God first, no matter the circumstances, He will see you through. With me saying that, we are here because of the power of prayer. I have prayed and prayed about this Community Oversight Board and the changes that needed to be made in this city. I feel like I will be a good candidate for the Community Oversight Board. One, because I've experienced personally the unjust. 2, I connect with the community. Throughout this course, with my voice, I know that there were people who wanted to destroy this city behind Jacquelyn's death, but I asked them not to. I asked them if they honored my son, then don't tear this city up. The city didn't do anything. It was just the one person. I believe that what the Bible says, and that is, before we enter into our mother's wombs, our days are numbered. We just don't know the day or the time until it happens. I also believe that He says, lean not unto your own understanding, but in all in our ways, acknowledge Him to where He gets the glory. And that's all I've been doing, is praising God through it all, because my son was a sacrifice for the change. I'm a native Nashvilleian, been here my entire life. I wasn't raised in an economic distress community because I was raised in Nolensville with values. But at some point in my life, I did live in what used to be John Henry Hell. I saw the police come and interact with the children there. So I'm not against the police at all. I just think that they just need accountability and transparency. I have, since Jacquelyn's death, have had to call the police for assistance myself. And I appreciate how they came. They didn't treat me any different. So I'm not against them. I just want what's done. I just need them to do the right thing. It's like having a bad apple in the barrel, and I'm sure you all have heard that statement. One bad apple spoils the whole barrel. I feel like one of the reasons we need this community oversight board is because people have tried to get it for years. And when officers have these disciplinary actions against them, if this board hadn't been in place, there's a strong possibility that Leverett wouldn't have came in contact with my son. And it's just not Leverett, it's others, and I know this. But this board is going to serve Nashville in a great way. I was brought up as a young child, going to the marches, not understanding why I was doing that as a child. But as I grew up, and I got to understand that marching is a part of us standing up for what is right. It's about everybody being treated fairly, not just because of the color of your skin. It is something that is of value. It's about change. When you talk about civil rights, it's about the change that's needed. I was once told that in order to do something, to make a change, you can't do the same thing and expect different results. You must do different if you want something different. I never thought that I would be in this place. Not in my life. But I am. And I know that God is using me to make a difference. I was angry, but I turned that into an action. And it wasn't just for myself. Because some point in time, at the sit-in, I came to realize that I couldn't help Jacquees. But if I could do something and keep striving to make a difference, I could help others. Since this, I joined a group called Mothers Over Murder. I am now the assistant director of that group. I reach out to the mothers. I show compassion. I have done community work. I have spoken at community events. I have even got awards for the things that I have done in the community from human rights, from IMF, from the NAACP. I would have rather had my son, but since I don't, this justice thing has got to change. People need to be treated fairly, not ran out of town because they have an encounter with the police. And that makes them feel unsafe, so they move out of Nashville. That's not right. It's not right at all. People need to get back to loving people. And when wrong is done, then wrong needs to be set right. I thank y'all for listening to me. I I give all praises to God because, like I said before, He is why we are here today. It's not that the people.
And I want to thank you so much. I'm so sorry for interrupting. Please forgive. I'm sorry, because we had already set the rules that we were going to do the time.
Go ahead.
So I'm sorry. It's time. It's.
Okay. Thank you.
But we really appreciate you coming and speaking with us.
Clemmons Lee,
So
thank you
so very much for
I will
coming
say
in.
what you said was very compelling. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hello, Mr. Turner. How are you?
I'm good. How are you all?
I am fine. You have the 3 sentences, the 3 questions that we gave you to talk to us about?
Right.
Okay, well, you will have 10 minutes. You can do it either way that you want to. It's going to be your show, and if you finish speaking before your 10 minutes is up, we will have some questions for you. And now, it's up to you. Thank you.
Well, thanks for having me here. The first question, I've lived in this city for a long time. Nashville used to be a city where people could work, play, and live in a safe environment. And I want to see that happen again. I think certainly with my background, I can be an asset to this board. I should be able to give some insight to a lot of things as it relates to law enforcement. The second question, my background in civil rights and equity issues in my employment, both with Metro and with the state. I had to oversee a HR section with Metro Police Department, and so I'm very familiar with that. And then I was with the state for 5 years and had the opportunity to be an assistant commissioner where I had to, again, deal with civil rights issues and equity issues. My background, most of my adult life was spent in law enforcement. I spent 34 years with the Metropolitan Police Department. I started out as a police officer trainee. I progressed through the ranks from trainee to patrolman to investigator to sergeant, lieutenant, captain, major, assistant chief, and in January of 1996, I was appointed police chief, and I served in that capacity for 7 years. I'm also a graduate of the FBI's National Executive Institute. I have had the fortune of going through the Dignitary Protection Program with the Secret Service. I am probably the only chief that has received an award from the U.S. Attorney, Janet Reno. So I have a pretty good background in law enforcement. And I just hope that if I am selected, that I would be an asset to this board, especially as it relates to matters regarding the police department. So that's the Cliff Notes version of my life.
Okay, sir. So we're going to open it up to see if any of the members have questions for you.
Yes, I've got some. Hey, Chief Turner, how are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Very well. I note that Citizens Police Academy that was started here under your term as police chief, is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. I want you to elaborate a little bit on your role in your position and the numerous positions you've held in the supervisor capacity on the police department. Elaborate on that role and how you handled internal personnel conduct matters.
I guess basically, if I can go back to as a supervisor in the field, as a sergeant, that's basically the first rank as a supervisor within the structure of the police department. You sort of do conflict resolution, and that goes throughout each position that I held in the police department. Even when I was chief, I think I did a pretty good job of being objective and dealing with complaints, dealing with disciplinary actions, various issues that confronted the department. Of course, you know, in an organization where you have several hundred employees, there will be disciplinary issues that will come up. One of the things that I did when I was chief, I was very high on community-oriented policing. And we started to build relationships with various faith community, with the faith community and with neighborhood organizations. And as I began to get feedback from some of the neighborhood groups, because we had encouraged them, if you had a complaint, if there was an issue in your neighborhood, we wanted you to call the precinct that covered that particular geographic area. But the feedback that I was receiving is that, yeah, we call, but we don't know who we talk to. And then when we tried to call back, we did not get the same individual, the same supervisor. So what I did, we created the position of community coordinator, which was a rank of sergeant. Each precinct had a community coordinator, and that person was primarily responsible for building bridges and helping out people in the community that had complaints. So instead of going to a haphazard group of people when they would call, they had one person that their message was directed toward. And that was the one person that I could hold responsible if there wasn't any results from that complaint. So,
if you're appointed, just one more question, I'll leave it alone. But if you're appointed to this board, Chief, it'll be pretty clear that your background in law enforcement is a major reason why you're appointed to the board. That said, what would you see as your role specifically on this community oversight board?
well, I think I would see my role as being very objective, being fair. Let me just be completely honest with you. I did not solicit to try to get on this board. I received a call and they asked if they could nominate me. And I was totally surprised by the people that called me. And I just hope that what they saw when I was with the police department, that I was at least fair in dealing with disciplinary actions, even when it came to termination or suspension or whatever. So, but yeah, I would hope that I would be an asset to the board based on my background. I think that, well, I don't think I know. I am the, I was the first and the only African-American police chief in the history of Nashville. So I think I have a feel for various neighborhoods. Although I've been away from the department for a long time, I still think that I have a pulse on what's going on in the city.
A little under 2 minutes.
Well, I'm grateful to you being here, Chief, and so impressed and awed by your experience. When people say you're going to represent the police viewpoint, I'm hearing from your answer to Councilman Pulley, your response is that you've been able to handle discipline in the police fairly over time, and you're not necessarily, you're familiar with discipline and you're used to it and you've done it, and it's not going to be a problem, that you're not going to be overly biased towards your old department.
No, I can unequivocally say that I'm not going to be an advocate for the police department. I'm going to be an advocate for what is right. And that was my whole position when I led the police department for my last 7 years there before I retired. And that's still my position. You know, one of the things that I tried to communicate to my executive staff, this board, this was not the first mentioning or coming of this board. I mean, this was talked about 15, 20 years ago. And one of my rebuttals, I guess, to the board at that time And I told the police officers and I told the staff, we have to be open with the city. If we make a mistake, we have to own up to it.
I'm so sorry for being rude, but your zero just popped up here and we're gonna have to cut it off. But we do want to say thank you so very much for coming and sharing with us.
Okay, thank you.
We so appreciate it. You have a great afternoon.
All right, you all too. Thank you very much.
Thank
Have a
you,
good
sir.
weekend.
Thank you, sir.
Break time?
It is break time.
I'll be back.
Okay, so what we are doing, everybody is doing the same.
Sorry, Russ.
His position
It-
was of the COP.
And I'm sorry, and with her too,
I've
I
already
wanted to
shared.
hear it.
Next appointment's at 2:30, so you have 10 minutes.
Yes. So that's what we, as a, decided to talk about it first, so that's, I'm trying to do the same to everybody.
I understand. I understand.
I just didn't want to feel like I just.
No, I understand.
Okay, so where's the coffee and the pizza and everything?
How you doing,
All right,
Betty?
be careful.
You're the chair, I understand.
Alrighty. How are you, sir?
I'm good, tired.
That's right. What did I have? 10 minutes?
Like right here, or? Oh, here. There, okay.
So wherever you would like to be, maybe that corner.
Yeah. I'll do a little scooching.
Yep.
Wow.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
Could be better.
Oh, why is that?
I just broke my mic stand.
Oh, that's bad.
Good times.
Oh,
Yeah.
I wonder if they have some tape somewhere here.
Oh, it's cool. I'll just lay the mic down over there.
There you go. There you go. Yeah.
It works out.
They're sitting over there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'll be able to do that. And let my boss yell at me for waiting.
You know what? What do they call that? Not swag. Do they have a name for that? Like, whatever that is. Things happen.
Yeah.
That's basically what it is.
Most
That's right. And it's never what you planned for.
Exactly.
I am so happy this everything cleared up. You know, for the March is great.
You know what?
Yeah.
I got here a little early. I thought that my person was going to be at 2:30, but he's going to be at 3:30. So I'm just going to hang out with you guys.
So your person being?
James Shaw is who I'm here for.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. So how does that work? So you're just?
I'm just here to record it, and I take it back to the station. They do whatever they do with it.
So they told you to?
Come here.
Come here to do his, particularly?
Just here, yeah.
Oh, how come?
Oh, I have no idea.
Oh, okay, you don't ask those questions.
I just go. I just go. But I think he's the one that was the Waffle House hero. The guy. So that's probably, they're going to do that connection.
It's too big. It's just,
Oh, okay.
so she's, applied to be
Right.
better. It's very touching. Yeah. So, I just realized
Wardrobe a little better.
Oh, yeah.
Up my wardrobe a little better,
I know
maybe.
someone who's going to be interviewed.
Yeah, right, exactly.
And she was saying she was up looking.
I've got the
President
of the Italian Blues Society and his wife that are here tonight, on their way to Memphis for next week.
It's great. Well, it's
The
great for the
International
public.
Blues
It's so
Challenge, which is what I
transparent. It's the whole idea.
Right.
Be transparent.
Oh,
but
really?
I'm in Memphis for work, but it's fun, but it's work.
You know, we can all complain.
It's a late call meeting.
You know what I mean? It's like,
That's what we have.
make them all, yeah.
You know, because I got a,
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
fortunately,
So you've got,
I'm the one out
Also,
of
each
town.
business has 10 minutes.
For
yeah,
what?
exactly.
Just
See,
because
it's really,
Yeah.
unfortunately, it's the 25th, or I'd be caught in the same boat.
Oh, right.
what are these, yeah, the.
Yeah, I'm board chair of the Blues Foundation, so I have to be,
What's that?
I'm board chair of the Blues Foundation, so I have to be there.
Recommended by
You know, it's,
Yeah.
nothing about that.
Yeah, it goes very fast.
How you doing?
I'm great. How are you?
Very well, thank you.
So they'll run this tonight.
I try to show so I can vibe if I make it back in time.
It's really
Time is it?
1 minute?
Yeah, where's everybody? Where's our chair?
Yeah. Channel 2 is here to cover James Shaw's interview. Oh, you're reading it. Oh, everything.
My son is out. Right. With a son and a scout camp out. Well, we sent him off with an extra raincoat.
Shall we get over?
Hi there, sir. How are you doing?
Thank you.
I am fine. I'm peachy keen to see you here today. Do you have the 3 questions that we wanted you to speak on?
Yes, ma'am.
Well, we're gonna turn the show to you. You can do it any way you want, and you'll have 10 minutes. And if you finish before then we'll have some questions for you.
Well, my interest in serving this court, I think, in the interest of the community, I think fair and impartial people are what we need on the board. I consider myself to be a very fair and impartial person. And I think it's a rarity. I want to say up front to
I am what I am by the grace of God, so anything I say is not boasting or bragging of my own self. As far as the background, I have no official training as part of that, but experiences of being in the military, learning about military justice, the part of the litigation, mitigation, as well as following the rules. When the rules are violated, that process that follows it is there and necessary. Also, I worked for AT&T for 32 years. AT&T was a very diverse company, one of the first to integrate in the city here with Western Electric back in the 60s. And so had experience in dealing with all manners of people and got along real well in regard to that. I've had, as far as my studying or application for it, I've been a Bible student for 50 years. I had some training in the school in regard to that, a couple of years in what would be considered seminary, school of preaching here in Nashville. That is from the book that all other good books should be based on, as far as principles of dealing with people, fair and impartiality, not putting one person or respect for a person. I'm kind of, other than that, I don't have any further training or anything, but if you want somebody highly educated or something, that's not me. If you want somebody that's a star in the community or something, that's not me. But if you want somebody that's fair and impartial, I think I qualify for that. I'm very disappointed in the board that is selecting this board, for you have not been fair and impartial. You had rules to comply by, and when someone of stature violated those rules, exception was made. Now that's not fair and impartial in their part. So the board that is selecting fair and impartial board is not fair and impartial themselves. That's very disappointing, very disappointing. And I think that whoever did that, whether it be a person or a group, they have given your opposition plenty of fodder to feed on that is trying to dissolve this whole process. And that's a poor, in my opinion, that's a very poor judgment, very case of being partial. Would that exception been made for me? I doubt it. Would it have been made for just an ordinary person of anyone? I doubt it. But because someone is a local, rightly so, hero, that does not make him, it seems like it's pre-selection, it's already decided who's going to be on the board, and this is just a process, kind of like the old Western movies. We're going to hunt them down, we're going to give them a trial, we're going to hang them. Seems kind of like the process here, the board's already in place, we're going to go through this process, and then we're going to dismiss you. We're going to let you qualify, we're going to give you an interview, and then we're going to dismiss you. If he's not, the only reason to make an exception for someone is because they want them on the board. Am I wrong? Anyway, I'm very disappointed in that.
Okay, have you covered everything that you wanted to in the 3 questions that we sent you?
As far as why I want to serve, instructions, yes, training, I think so.
Okay. All right, then we're going to open it up now for some questions from our council people.
Well, I'll start on, thank you, Mr. Crews. Pursuant to your comments about this, I think 170 people have been nominated to come here and to go through this process, of which, by the charter amendment, we are supposed to pick 7. If you would share advice for us, what should we be looking for in picking the 7 out of 170?
Fair and impartial, that's what it should be, primarily and foremost.
And how do we find those great qualities? How do we identify them?
Well, I do not know that exactly. I mean, is there I think background, I have no arrest record anywhere, never been arrested, or I've never been accused of being partial towards people in any way. So I mean, record stands for itself there, and I don't think, I think just you living your whole life can probably stand for what you are, and in the community, I've never had any conflict. I've dealt with people in church and all for 50, 60 years. I was a Little League Baseball commissioner. I forgot that even was a qualification. Sometime umpired, even when my own boys were on the team. I've never been accused of being impartial. I've never been questioned on the calls I made and things, but I think we're always fair and right. So I think, not thinking too highly of myself, I think I am a very fair and very impartial person. And truth and right stand above anything else. That's what I'm disappointed in the committee when they put it in bold print. If you don't make your appointment time, you will be considered disqualified. You put yourself in an awkward, a big hole, in my opinion, because if you do choose that man, you open up yourself to your adversary completely. If you don't choose him,
I'm thinking, getting back to you. So tell us, what is your opinion exactly what this commission is set to do?
I think they're going to pick a board. I think it's already pretty well, some of them are already determined.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, I mean, what is the board going to do? What is the committee that you are interviewing for? What do you see that as doing?
Well, in community conflict, where the board can maybe be a go-between to kind of assure that both sides are getting another look. You might say at the situation, and they need someone who can look at that, both sides. I think that the scriptures again teach that anybody that looks at one side and makes a decision is not very wise. You can hear one side of anybody. You can take people that are in dispute and you hear one side, of course they sound right. You hear the other side, it might change your thinking. You need to hear both sides well and make ascertain all the truth you can before you make a decision on anything.
Do I have any other questions? Yes, sir.
I appreciate what you said, and I respect your position on that. And what I would like to do in playing off the fair and impartial thing, you mentioned a lot about your study of the Bible, and you've mentioned that a couple of times during your opening remarks. If you were selected for this board, is it your position that you will use that as somewhat of a standard to apply to?
Oh, certainly. No standard is put forth there. Treat others that you want to be treated, not show impartiality, not respect for persons that are due to anything physical, height, conflict, notoriety, or whatever, you know. You don't respect a person. You look at the facts of what happened, you know, and you make a decision from that, not regarding the person, who the person is involved.
Okay, any other questions? Sir, you have a little less than 2 minutes before your exit. Is there any lasting words about your qualifications for this that you would like to share with us?
Nothing else other than what I've said, that I do feel that I truly be impartial and would give it the best of my ability to give a verdict.
Great. Well, we want to thank you so very much for coming and being so open and honest with us and sharing with us. And you have a great afternoon.
Thank you. I'll be back Monday and be dismissed.
Be careful, sir.
Thank you. Tuesday, make that Tuesday.
I didn't understand what you said.
Yeah, I did.
It's kind of ridiculous, and now he's going to be on the television. That's like terrible. It's really terrible.
He said he'd be back Tuesday to be with us. That's what he said.
He can't.
He was late.
All right then.
And then they decided to let him be here today, and now he's going to be on the television? I mean, that's really wrong. I would just offer, I know I'm a community person just sitting here, but I'm just offering you, that looks really bad. He's going to be on the TV after missing his
Okay, thank you, sir. Mr. Russell?
Yes.
Right there, please. Do you have the 3 questions that we sent you?
I have them. I did receive them. I didn't bring them.
Okay, do you need to refer to them? Because I have them. Those are the 3 things, they're right there, that we want you to answer, and you can talk about them any way you want to. You'll have 10 minutes, and if you finish before the end of the 10 minutes, then we'll have some questions for you, sir.
All right.
And it's your show.
All right. Well, first, thanks for having me. So, as far as my interest, I think the main thing is that I believe that it is important to have an oversight board. when I thought about it, I couldn't identify another situation in which a group of people pay an organization to provide a service for them, but they have no oversight over how that service is administered, received, so forth and so on. So I feel like this really shouldn't even be new, because in every other situation like this, the board, the people that are paying and receiving the services have some say in how it goes about, right? So I feel like it was necessary, but I also feel like it has to be done in a way that's not a revenge board. It can't be a tool for people to be upset that the police, they feel like they've been over-policed. Abusive policing, anything like that, but it has to be a tool that puts everything on board, not a tool that kind of gives people a tool for revenge or, you know, something to try to hold over the person that keeps stopping them because they're speeding. And you really don't get a second chance to do a foundation. So really need to get this right the first time when we come out the gate with it, so that the groups that follow behind have some precedence over how we need this to look for our community to really benefit from it. There is enough divisive politics in us, them already, to not create more on either side of the aisle. So, you know, I don't really believe in sitting on the sidelines when I see something I believe is going to be beneficial. So I put my name in the hat to see if my services could be of use. Yeah, I think it's going to be important. I think it's crazy it didn't exist already. That's just kind of how the country has these things set up right now, but I think it's necessary. As far as my background and familiarity with civil rights and equity issues, historically, whenever it takes a movement to get things off the ground, unless you know that the events are happening frequently enough and in large enough numbers for there to actually be a movement. Whether it's women's suffrage, it took all of these incidences for this to actually become a movement. Civil rights, it took all of these incidents to be a movement. Me Too, all of these incidents to be a movement. And so the fact that there are actual movements suggests and probably confirm that we got a long way to go. We have a long way to go, but people are willing to do the work. We just have to give people the opportunity to be heard, to be respected. And I think people that are heard and respected typically respond better than people who feel like they have to be aggressive or demeaning to get the attention that they're looking for. So I think you just look through history, man. There are dozens of examples where it took movements for us to really get on board with the fact that some group of people are not being heard and respected, or at least feel like they aren't being heard and respected. And it took an actual movement, and those aren't common. But history just shows that civil rights and equity reasons have caused multiple movements. My background with criminal justice and policing practices, I worked at the police department for 4 years. I've taken several criminal justice classes, both as part of the police department and part of my formal education. And policing practices, I was part of the force, so I don't just understand the way we feel about what the police can and can't do. I was taught what the police can and can't do. I know the general orders of the police department. I know the things they say shall be done or shall not be done, when, why, where, and how. So these aren't assumptions that I have to make. These are things that I know. I also know that it's easy to look at something on the camera and it didn't look that way at all in real life. When you look back at it yourself, you're like, man, I'm not lying to myself. I know that's not what I saw. I know the difficulties that you have to make, the difficult decisions you have to make all of a sudden. It's just a real thing. So I don't have a lot of speculative issues with this. I know these things. I've experienced these things. I went through some of them with some really good people, and I went through some of them with some not really good people, but every organization has those dynamics. But I think that my experience, my real life in the field, dealing with the experience, gives me an opportunity to see, no, sir, that's not how you're supposed to do this. That's not how they taught you to do this. I know how they taught you to do this. That wasn't it. I also know that you could be telling the exact truth about what you remember this looking like, because in the heat of the moment with adrenaline, fear, things look different. So just that experience is the base of my familiarity with those practices.
Okay. Let's open it up. Do I have any questions?
Sure.
Please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Notice you've got a background as a patrol officer and in law enforcement. Looks like you went to the private enterprise. Can you tell me why you got out of the law enforcement field?
Yeah, well, first, my vitiligo started, so you can't really do, you can, but wearing all that sunscreen each and every day gets tedious. It's just not, it's not really conducive with that job. But probably past that, you know, once I had my first kid, the things that made me nervous, I started to fear. And it's a dangerous job, but when you go into situations already scared, your decisions are made out of fear. And there were several times in which just worrying about the kid, just mentally, it just wasn't a good fit once. And I had to accept that. I had to accept that when I was single and it was just me and my mom was worried. But my mom was career law enforcement, so, you know, that was less of a concern. Once I had a kid and a wife, the risk rewards, they just didn't add up anymore.
So you think that experience in law enforcement, do you think that will in any way hinder your ability to be objective on this board?
I believe it'll be the opposite. I believe that because I don't have to guess that what the general order says in this place, I don't have to guess how you were taught to apply this general order. I also don't have to guess what it looks like when somebody reaches for their pen really fast and how that feels to you on the other side of that. So is there a space to where I would probably see things a lot different depending on who else I would be on the board with? Absolutely. But I think that depending on the situation, they could shake either side of the fence. So, you know, if what you did is, you know, written right here and you just like, it didn't look that way in the moment, that's probably true. That's probably true. Reciprocally, you also can't just come in here and feed me anything because I've already drank the Kool-Aid. So I know better. So.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Just with your experience in the department, just you said you believed in this process, the board, from that. It was just, would you elaborate, because you're going to be familiar with oversight procedures in the department now, and is your view, are they inadequate, and is this a useful supplement?
I think that it's really difficult to expect a group of people who have a very dangerous job to oversee each other and not have a tilt towards their oversight. That doesn't make people bad people. That's just the realism of the situation. You know, if you've ever been shot at or had somebody pull a gun on you before and had to deal with that, there's a certain bond that you build with people. And I don't think that the current oversight is necessarily inadequate. I just think that the human limits and deficiencies cause those things to leave gaps. So this board does several things. One, it gives the investors, it gives the people who receive these services some of their people that also have the opportunity to look at these situations, have some level of subpoena power and things like that. It also gives an unbiased eye to something that maybe that both sides can collaborate, like, did you really look at this objectively, and et cetera, et cetera. So it's not so much I think that it's inadequate, I just think that humans have limits, and you know, that's a really, really difficult thing to do, to oversee somebody who you know has such a task each and every day, and to expect these people to just look at it and say, the same way we might look at it. It's a really difficult task, and some people do it probably, but it's difficult.
I'm so sorry to be so rude, but the 0 just popped up on here, so that means it's time for us to tell you thank you so very much for coming and presenting to us. And hope you have a wonderful afternoon.
Thank you all.
Thank you, sir. My name is Thornton.
Yes.
How are you doing? That chair right there is all for you. And do you
Thank you.
are you familiar with the 3 questions that we asked you to work on, to present with us?
I am aware that I would be questioned specifically.
Okay, I think you have them right before us. Those are the 3 that we actually want you to answer in your talking. And it'll be your show. You can talk, you can handle those questions however you like. You'll have 10 minutes. At the end, if you finish talking before the 10 minutes is up, then we will have some questions for you. And right now, I'm turning it over to you because it's your show.
Okay, so I can answer them in order.
Any way you want, smush them all together, one at a time, it's you.
Okay, question number 1, it says briefly explain your interest in serving on the Community Oversight Board and the reason you wish to serve. My initial response is that it is a civic duty with me regarding to the Community Oversight Board. I have always participated in community activities throughout my life, from my childhood. This is something that I was taught from my mother and my grandmother, who were educators. I love serving. I'm trained formally as a basic biomedical research scientist and investigator. Currently, I conduct proprietary research in the development or further development of non-invasive technologies, of which one of the projects that we are looking into or looking at happens to be eye tracking technology, the use of eye tracking technology and adapting it for purposes of security, national security, as well as it being utilized for Metropolitan police forces. This technology that we are looking at, where we can anticipate, hopefully anticipate what a suspect or suspect's behavior is likely to be or is thinking, where we map the brain using functional magnetic resonance, or MRI, as well as positron emission technology, which is PET scanning. And this is based on a concept or construct that was developed some years ago. It's called concepts of convergence, where we take disparate technologies and bring them together. But security and education is what my background is in and where I would like to go with this technology. I'm a data person, so I'm very much interested in developing and looking at data as it relates to behavior, that is criminal behavior, as well as behavior among those individuals that are involved in the police force, on the police force. Familiarity with civil rights and equity issues. Before I go into that, let me say that I was a student at Clark Atlanta University in the early 80s, and I participated in the search. This was during the Atlanta child killings, and Maynard Jackson was the mayor at that particular time, and I was a part of the staff or school students who went out and searched for bodies. I was also a statistics person. I aced statistics. I enjoy data. I enjoy voluminous amounts of data, and participating in the analytics of data for purposes of not only just analyzing the data, but for developing an artificial intelligence base. My goal, if I'm selected to be a part of this commission, is to make Nashville, this commission, a world-class body. This is a great city. It's a tremendous city with a great deal of potential, and I would like to see it as a port and an example for other cities to look at as a bastion of exemplary police force enforcement and an example of how a city should be and have a relationship with its community. When I finished undergraduate at Clark, I asked them, what do I need to do? What does a person like me do? And they said, serve your community. I left there and I went to the University of Hartford for my graduate work and UConn School of Medicine, and I asked them, what do I need to do? And they said, serve your community. This is very important to me. Yes, I am familiar with civil rights, human rights, and equity issues. This is also very important to me as well. I am compassionate about things that I do. I am a voracious reader. I like to study. I play chess. I'm a correspondence international grandmaster. I like to be active. I'm an old man with a young spirit. I like working in the community. I teach chess to students. I still tutor. I still recognize many of the young people that I have taught over my career. And I am aware of and have experienced and participated in equity issues and civil rights. I believe in fairness, in complete fairness and integrity. That is very important to me. I read a book, To Become a Scientist, by P.B. Medawa, my first week of graduate school. And the emphasis was being objective, being fair, looking at and interpreting results accurately and with truthfulness. It's very difficult for many people to look at something without a bias. That requires experience and training, but it can be done. And I thank God for the people that trained me, that gave me the opportunity over my lifetime. I'm a project kid, but I have had many great people, many great
I am so sorry for being rude, but I'm charged that when the time comes, I'm supposed to stop it.
Okay.
And thank you so very much for coming to us as you have. And that's it.
Oh, well, it's been my pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Fascinating human.
Excuse me.
Is Ms. King?
No show.
Okay, she's not here.
10 minutes.
Okay, thank you.
On his birthday?
Yeah, he was.
Chair over there.
Chair over there.
Sorry I missed the event tonight.
Oh, no, that's
We
fine.
were here.
Yeah.
I heard good news.
No, I'm sitting here.
Oh. Well, then that wasn't.
Are you? I don't think, that's why I was looking to make sure.
Shall we get a 10-minute break here?
So you have until 3:10 if you all need to do something. Ms. King did not show.
It's a challenge.
Okay, good.
Chair.
My committee is done early, and since I was a little late on this Thursday, I figured I'd sit in. So, I was early, so tonight I was like, I guess I better just go ahead and come dressed. Well, we have a little bit of a dress malfunction. I'm in option number 2 rather than 1.
I'm gonna have to stand there and watch because you guys will torch me. I want you and yes.
About the cutoff, so I won't see him move. That's what we as a group decided. Oh, okay, okay, so you, okay, cool.
That way I wasn't.
Pick it up for real. The one in Rivergate.
I just didn't want to see him.
It's so peppery. My granny watched it do. She tell me every day. Y'all did it together, right? Someone else, I think it was. Huh? It's been good.
How are you, ma'am?
I was doing well. I was here like a second.
Brett gone.
DJ was over here. I don't know. This camera was. Yeah, I'm going. But you didn't look our way. We just went around asking folks at that time. You didn't look our way. So the only person, if you was looking this way, you could have saw the Steve because she was right there. So we was out lined up. Just right down the street. We taking notes. How was y'all's room? How was your room?
Yeah, on the house.
Ooh, I can't wait to see your nuts on that way. Yeah. Same. It was really, really good. It was wonderful.
He was talking to the vice mayor and a whole bunch of officers that were talking about scans.
Sorry.
How to say this? I'm wrong on these. Let me see. Here you go.
I'm gonna look at this iPad. I cannot. Who nominated?
Signs have a magnificent art collection.
Yes, and wine.
Oh, really? Well.
She'll released all this political art a couple of years
You're
ago.
talking about Ronnie Sang, we're talking about somebody else.
This is
Different family?
it's a District 24. Well, you know that's right.
Yay!
Well, it's old Nashville.
Thank you.
To know that it's from District 24.
Well, no, he just moved out at the time.
Well, but
It's not.
even though wetlands.
Not too slow. You can do this if you want to. Slow it down. She's gonna get up in just a minute.
Chair Whitman, welcome.
She's gonna get up in just a minute.
Room number 4.
Yeah, because the other committee is done.
Yes. Can't fix that. Who really wants to take that? I'll be making sure that's the service. So there's 2 balls. There's one that's like the first ball, and then the second one is the Juventus. The Juventus ball is more probably different.
I can tell you, it's, I think it's Adele Lewis.
And so we said, we would like our money back.
Adele.
Did you want?
That was my mom's.
It looks so nice.
Quiet.
Here comes Charlie.
Well behaved.
Huh?
Well
You're on
behaved.
session. Oh, yeah. Yeah, just, do y'all need anything? Water?
I need a
No, sir.
A lobster tail?
A lobster.
I need a chicken leg.
A chicken? Am I taking up somebody's time?
Come on,
Come on in.
Some water?
How are you?
I'm doing good.
Here's some of it.
How you doing?
Thank you. Hi, excuse me. Hi, sir. How are you doing?
I am doing great. How about you?
Great. It is a great day. We're all here and
Well,
just waiting
so
to hear
far.
from you. Yes. Do you have the 3 questions that we sent you to talk about?
Yes.
Okay. So it is going to be your show. You can talk about them any way you want, all together, one at a time, whatever. You'll have 10 minutes to speak. And when you finish, we'll have questions for you. And if you're starting to run over, I'm sorry for being rude, but I'm going to have to interrupt you.
That's fine.
But now it's your show.
Okay, my show.
Yep.
This is what I wanted to say to start this session off, just to let you know that the effectiveness of this board It's going to depend on this group and the other committee rooms, the people who's picking it. Now, when I heard about the people that was trying to gather the signatures to get this on the ballot, I said to myself that this is something that I'm going to have to back. I want to have to get out there and try to help, or at least be on the committee, because as we all know, and I'm hoping you still remember, that there's a couple of mothers out there that lost sons just to get this committee up and running. And me personally, I didn't want to slap them in the face again by being on a committee that maybe just have people on it just for photo ops. Whenever there's a groundbreaking or a ribbon cutting, they show up, but they don't do work during the other times. And I didn't want to have a lot of people on the committee that also showed up just to further their political career. You know, down the road, I want to run for mayor, or vice mayor, or state rep. I didn't think that was what this committee needed. I didn't think that's what this committee wanted. So myself, I've worked with the police department, both good and bad. I worked on both sides. I have to say, I know how they operate a little bit. I was the executive director of the Police Athletic League for several years, and I had about 6 or 7 of them under my guides. And oh boy, I know how they work sometimes. And I like to let people know that there's good police officers out there. There's good people out there. And they're not all bad, and I want everybody to understand it. Also, that being said, I just don't want this board to be filled with people who have that vendetta against the police department. That's a good police department. What you have to do is have transparency in everything that you do. We all know that the police department is going to protect one another. We already know that. I was just looking at a story the other day out of Chicago where they had this code of silence where something happened and all the other police officers was afraid to say anything because somebody had left them a message that if you speak or squeal, you're dead on the street. Now, if you ask the police department here, they're going to tell you there's no such thing. But we all know. We're adults. We can be real. We can be frank. We know how that works. Now, I also worked with some of the kids out there when I worked for the Woodland Hill program over there. Yeah, I talked to some of the kids. They told me what they thought about the police department. Most of it wasn't good, and you know that. But I tried to encourage them to keep going, doing what they were doing. And so that's basically why I'm here. I've been out there in the community for the last 20 to 30 years doing things. I'm assuming I know a few of you. I've seen you. I know a few of you. Yes, I ran for city council before, and I ran for at-large. And I've done all of that. And I know how hard it is to get signatures just to get on the ballot. And when I saw that those people had gotten that many that quick and had also abided by all the timelines and all the guides, then again I thought, hey, I've got to get involved and try not to let this thing go to waste.
Okay.
Any questions?
We'll open it up now. Do any of the committee meeting members have a question?
Well, I'll go first. Get your advice. 179 people have volunteered to be on this board. We picked 7. What should we be looking for?
Well, the first thing you got to do is you got to make sure, and I guess you have to just, in this short period of time, I know it's tough on y'all as well because you have so many people to interview, so many people to talk to in a short amount of time. But you have to try to see whether or not those open-minded people, you have to ask them what they've done. Have they worked with the police department? You know, there's people in here that have not had that encounter with the police department. I have, good and bad. I told you about the executive director of the Police Athletic League. I sort of helped start the Crime Stopper program. Me and Lieutenant Jerry Mays, we brought the program here to Nashville. And I've had bad. I've had police stop me for no reason at all, just driving down the street. But I've had some stop me for good purposes. One stopped me. I'm like everybody else, knee-jerk reaction. I get out of the car. I'm upset. I'm mad. And he told me, the only reason I stopped you is because your brake lights is out. And I thought, boy, I've heard that excuse a million times. But he stepped on my brake pedal, no lights. I had to go back and apologize to him. I apologized to him because
he did do a good deed, because if not, somebody could have rear-ended me and all that stuff. But again, like I said, there are some good ones out there. So it's going to be tough. That's all the thing I can tell you. It's going to be tough to try to pick 7 or 8 people out of 150. But this is what I want you to do. When you do pick those people, for whatever purpose it is, and I want to kind of pick a bone with you already, I think you've already started poking holes in the system. You poke too many holes in a boat, it's not going to float. I think you've already done the system that way. I saw where James Shaw missed his thing, and then all of a sudden, we couldn't figure out what happened. He rescheduled. But I think the board rescheduled, not him, and that's not fair. What about the other 149 people that came on time, filled out their paperwork on time, showed up, and then he gets to redo his second chance? When we got all those memos from Vice Mayor Shaw, Jim Schuman, he told me, or he told us, whoever got the memos, this was your time, put it in. If not, you're disqualified. This was the time that you had to turn that app in. If you didn't turn the app in by this time, you're disqualified. If you didn't write up an appointment, you disqualified. All those things what the other people went through. And that's one of the things you have to take in consideration of yourselves. Those things are what this board deserves. They deserve hard facts, people who's willing to work and not here for a photo op or just to further their political career or a political favor because you did something for me. Always remember that there's a couple of mothers out there still grieving because their son got killed to get this board on the ballot. So I expect this board to be up and running with good people, whether or not it's me or not. I would prefer, but if you decide to elect some other people, that's fine. But again, it's going to be on your shoulders, the people that you elect, what they do for the board.
You've got a little less than 2 minutes. Anybody else have a question?
Come on, ask me something. I'm not shy.
Believe me, my folks aren't either, so.
Yeah.
Did you have one? Look on your face.
Okay, I'll go ahead and ask you. You did indicate you were stopped for no reason, and how did you reach that conclusion?
Well, because I noticed, I thought he did until he explained to me, and I saw what he did, and I went back and apologized to him.
So in effect, you weren't stopped for no reason, is it?
In effect, I was not.
Okay.
And that's why I say we can't come to knee-jerk reactions. After a while, and you know as well, we develop this thing where we come to these knee-jerk reaction. A police says something to you, does something, moves, anything, we get on the defensive. We want to say something bad about him. And I realized this guy was doing me a favor. And that's why I was more than willing to stop him right there. Before he got back in the car, I apologized. It wasn't, I didn't come down here to apologize to him. I stopped him before he got in the car. And I told him, I said, man, I know you may think that because I'm black, I got out angry and mad and all that. And I said, we've seen too many situations like that. We've seen too much of that. And I said, I wanted to thank you for stopping me for legitimate. And I appreciate what he did for me. Because if I had gotten rear end somewhere, and my neck snapped, then,
Thank you for that clarification.
And sir, we have less than a minute, so what several words do you want to leave with us on your exit?
Well, I don't know who's going to go back and when this committee...
I'll talk too long because they're going to come in and pull you out in just a minute. The zero just touched, so I'm sorry.
Oh, they're not going to come
in. So that time, but that time is up. So, but we want to thank you all so very much for coming in and sharing with us and being very honest, and we really appreciate your words.
All right, I appreciate y'all having me, and good luck with the committee.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Ms. Chapman is not here.
Okay.
10 minutes.
So you have... let me finish. Do you want me to finish? Chair Lady Taylor?
Chapman,
Correct, she's not here.
As they're bringing in more chairs, I'm like, somebody with a first chair, I
do that sometimes. I tend to overcomplicate things.
Actually, it's something to eat. How are you? I'm well.
All right, I'm sorry. I just ran over.
Oh, Ms. Chatman. Hey there. How are you? I am fine, thank you. Well, we're glad to see you. So you have until thank you, 3:40.
Okay.
And so we're gonna let you go ahead and start and have a talk. I'm sorry, that is 3:30. I'm gonna let you go ahead and have a talk and present to us any way you want, and then we'll stop you at the end. Glad you came and joined us.
Well, I'm glad I made it, and I'm glad that everybody is here waiting on me. I didn't hear you too late. My name is Patricia Chatman. I don't really know where to start. I am currently retired from the state and metro government, so I was able to coordinate that and retire both places at the same time. I've been retired since 2014, and I guess during the past 5 years now, I've just been trying to figure out what am I doing since I don't have to get up and go to work and I don't have staff to deal with. There are just a lot of things that I was doing, very busy. Now it's more quiet, my grandchildren, and just fun. So, when I was working with Metro government, I started off working as a counselor at a youth development center. From there, I moved into a group home director position, and it was in Lebanon, Tennessee, and both of these positions were dealing with our sweet little delinquent boys. And that I learned quite a bit from them. If you have any questions of me, please just ask me. From there, I moved to state government with the Tennessee Housing Development Agency, where when I started there, I was hired on as the Deputy Executive Director, and I oversaw the housing subsidy programs for the state of Tennessee. Every program that was getting federal funding came into my shop, and there were various divisions that did specific things, but I did that for about 5 years. Loved it, learned a lot, but in conversations with the executive director at the time, we were talking more about how staff development. How do you get staff to a career ladder? How do you get staff to do what needs to be done? And just how do you handle people, manage people? And so from there, he appointed me as the first chief leadership officer for THDA. And as Chief Leadership Officer, I was the chairperson for the Staff Development Council. That's not what we called it, but that's what it was. And we developed guiding principles for staff. How you interact with not only your co-workers, but our partners, federal government, state, other state agencies, and recipients. Because how you interact with people really tells, it sets the tone for where you go from there. So we came up with what we call guiding principles, which basically said, here's how you act in this situation. It's just a general. This is what you shoot for. Because we, believe it or not, housing is a very touchy area, especially if you're a recipient of some of the programs or the subsidies or whatever that you get. It's a little touchy when you have to tell people they've done something wrong, they've messed up, they no longer qualify. So you had to go through, okay, all right, they may be angry, they may be saying something really ugly to you, but here's what you, as a THDA representative, this is your way of reacting or responding. And I know it's kind of hard. You can't, people are going to do what people do. But if you give them enough reasons to know why it's better to react this way as opposed to this way, and help people understand that that my reaction does affect, it does have an impact. So, I mean, that's kind of where we came from with our guiding principles. And honestly, we had 10 guiding principles, kind of like the 10 Commandments. And I trained new staff on the guiding principles. Here's what we do. Here's how we do it. And that went a long way. I was really impressed, I guess, with the way staff took to that. And the conversations would include, well, the guiding principle says we should do it this way, or that kind of thing. And there would be people really took to that whole idea of this is how we interact. This is who we are, because that's basically what it was, defining who you are. And and do you want to stay with that definition? And as long as it's a solid, gets the outcome that you're after definition, people will stick with it. They will stick with it.
Yes. I was just going to say, you got less than a minute. Give us a word or two that you want to leave with us upon your exit.
A word or two.
Before that zero comes.
I am really excited about this opportunity. When this whole idea of the Community Outreach Board was first presented to the public and I heard about it, the first thing I said was, ooh, that's a good idea.
Great. That is wonderful. And I want to thank you so very much for leaving those with us, and thank you so very much for coming and sharing with us.
Sure.
Hope you have a wonderful evening, and you be careful out there.
Yes, ma'am. I plan on being here.
Okay. Thank you. And we're ready for the next person. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you for offering yourself up as a candidate. Thank you.
Don't forget your bag. Don't forget your bag.
You don't know how many times I want to leave my first.
I could tell you were about to leave. We wouldn't let you do that.
6:30. So I think I said for one more, and then I'm going to scoot over.
I hope y'all don't stay here too late. It's supposed to get ugly tonight.
You're right.
Mr. Shaw? Mr. Shaw? Mr. Shaw?
I was trying to get through.
Mr. Shaw, time is ticking. Mr. Shaw? Hello, how are you? Thanks for coming in. Fine. Do you have the 3 questions that we asked you to come and speak with us on?
Slightly.
Okay.
Right here in front of me.
They're right there in front of you. So we're going to give the time over to you. You can go over them any way you want, smush them together one at a time, however you want. You will have 10 minutes to talk. If you happen to finish before the 10 minutes, then we will have some questions for you.
Okay.
And so now it's going to be your show.
Okay. So the first question is briefly explain your interest in serving on the Oversight Board and the reasons you wish to serve. My name is James Shaw. I think everybody's pretty familiar with what happened last year, what my platform is right now, and that I'm trying to use it in a responsible way. I am from Nashville. I'm 30 years old. I'm an old man now. And with that, I want to help inspire the next generation that's coming up. I know my voice is very powerful within the city of Nashville, and me being from Nashville. And this board is very important. And with my voice, I feel like I can be kind of a liaison between what's going on in the city politically and with the police force and everything, and to the neighborhoods within the city of Nashville. I feel that my voice is, very, very valuable, and I don't want it to get lost, and I want to use it responsibly, and this is a way that I can do that. The second question is, please describe your background and or familiarity with civil rights and equity issues. I don't have a whole lot of background with civil rights. I was an electrical engineering major out of TSU. I'm an electrician. But I know what's right is what's right and what's wrong is wrong. I'm a person of high respect and morals and value. I don't really do anything that's not really. I wouldn't say I don't do anything that's not really approved of. I kind of just try to fly under the radar and try to be an even, smooth-headed person. I don't try to take other people's what they say might be the truth. You have to find out the truth for yourself. And when you find out the truth for yourself, you have to make sure that it's just not what you want to hear; it's what actually the truth is. You have to get your resources and everything. You have to make sure that they're honorable. You just can't reach from one pot and think it's always the truth. The third question is, please describe your background, experience, or familiarity with criminal justice and policy practices. Once again, not my exact field, but like I said, my platform is very large. I feel that, especially within the city of Nashville, I'd be very, very valuable to the board. As far as, the stuff with police and policing and how it goes and how they're trained. Most policemen, almost every policeman I talk to knows me. They kind of think a lot of me, same thing as firemen, and I think a lot of policemen and firemen being in the situation I was in. I respect them highly, and they respect what I did highly. So I feel that with that being said and, the way that they feel, I feel like that's a very valuable necessity to be on this board, and that I'm very relatable to, and that the story is very relatable to, and it's just, I feel like I'm just very valuable and could be very valuable to the board.
Okay. All right, so we've got about 5 minutes. Let's open it up for some questions.
Yes,
my subcommittee folks.
Yes, sir. Ma'am.
Oh,
sorry about
thank
that.
you.
Yeah, I've got a question for you. I looked at your questionnaire, and in terms of community service, all the people who'll be evaluating you understand how difficult and hard community service is and how much hard work that is. When I looked at yours and I saw voting, and then I saw appearances at a few places, and I'm concerned also about the fact that we only have one person that showed up 20 minutes late for the interview and had it rescheduled, and that's you. So this board is very important to an awful lot of people. And as you can see right in here, a lot of people are concerned, and I personally am looking for somebody who's going to be there and who's going to dig into the hard work when the cameras aren't there watching. My studies of other boards say that that's some of the difficult things that we have, is getting people to show up for things that are not very high profile. Convince me that I shouldn't be concerned about you.
Convince you?
Yeah.
I can't 100% convince you. I can't.
Convince us.
What I can tell you is that I went to 100 James Robertson Parkway, which is across the street.
Say it again.
I went to 100 James Robertson Parkway, which is across the street, and I talked to 3 security guards. I walked across the building 3 or 4 times trying to get into the Birch building. Then I walked over here to the back of the building, which wasn't open. Then I had to walk around. I talked to another security guard when I was at the back, and I had to walk around. I was actually here at 7:15. By the time I got through the door and got through talking to security, it was 7:18, and I waited to 8:32 to not be seen. But you have to take me for my word. I gave $250,000 away. I don't know if I can convince you or not, but I gave $250,000 away. I'll be here. My word is my word.
My concern is simply the work, being there and showing up every day.
My word is my word.
Okay, we have under 3 minutes. Anybody else have a question?
I
Committee
have
member?
one, Madam Chair. I'd like to ask
Let me check first. Any other subcommittee members?
Just very quickly,
Take them first.
thank you for being here. You are the next generation. Your generation in Nashville, I think, has had issues with the police. And if I know you have had a extraordinary relationship with the police, would you just comment about your generation's relationship with the police department in Nashville and what should be done to maybe improve that?
So it's kind of a double question with that. I'm an African-American man. That's the first part of that question. The second part of that question is I'm just a human, right? I have a lot of friends that's actually in law enforcement. I have ample friends that have had problems with police. So I've always been a person kind of in the middle. One thing I can say that I would do that would help out, I think, the communities more is put police, make them walk a beat. Make them get outside their car, make them be. It's almost impossible for you to shoot somebody after you see them. Or it's almost impossible for you to disrespect somebody or not trust somebody after you see them. After you see them in that community once or twice or 3 or 4 times, you get to know Derek. You get to know Mark. You get to know Tiffany or whoever's in that community. You get to know their actions and where they're going to be. If you never see that person or you never in that community, if this is your first time, then, you don't know what's going on. You don't trust that situation. As far as the African-American community, that part, African-American people, let me not speak in general terms. Some African-American men have had problems with police force and police authority. But that's because of how their upbringing was and the environment they're in. There has to be trust on both sides. August 26th of last year, I had a come-together day where I had police and I had firefighters.
Mr. Shaw, I am so sorry, but the time is now 3:40, and as I did with everybody else, I am going to stop you. Okay. But I do appreciate you coming back and you sharing with us and you talking with us, and thanks so very much for coming back.
No problem.
Thank you so much.
Have a great afternoon.
No problem. Have a good day.
Hi there, sir. How are you doing today?
I'm good. How about everybody else?
We are doing fine. Do you have the 3 questions that we sent you to talk from?
Yes, I have them.
Okay, so you may answer them any way you want. We just want to make sure that part of your answer includes all of those.
Okay.
We're going to give you the time to do it any way you want. You'll have 10 minutes. If you finish talking before the end of 10 minutes, then we'll have questions for you. If you run over 10 minutes, I will interrupt you, so excuse me now. But you know what? The floor is yours, sir.
Yes, ma'am. Can I wait
Yes, you
for
may.
my people to come in?
Just know that it's part of, got you on the clock. But
Yes,
any
ma'am.
way you
Yes,
want to
ma'am.
do it. Yes, sir.
Okay, I'm ready. First I want to start with thanks everybody for having me here. The reason why I want to be involved with community oversight now is with the community oversight board is because I do frontline work. That's where the majority of my work happens, right on the front line. Right now I'm working at Pearl-Cohn to try to promote restorative justice in schools, very specifically around those kids who are expelled and encounter suspension the most. And so what we do is we bring them in, we have a conversation with them, we kind of build a relationship, and then we rely on that relationship to kind of guide them through conflict. So one thing that we've been able to do since we've been in Pearl-Cohn, we've been able to drop the suspension rate by 70%. And so I know relationships work, and I know community being involved in those relationships work. And they also promote shared power and power with relationships, having a community member, because I am a community member that works in a metro school. I'm not a metro school employee. So the kids in the population that encounter suspension and discipline the most work with me the best because I'm a community member. So I think Community Oversight Board has an opportunity to bring the community and police together and create a relationship that does not exist right now. My background, I do a lot of work in schools as far as restorative justice. I also do history work outside of the community, in the community outside of school, where we also try to build relationships as far as how people remember the past. And that community work and historical work is around trauma that has happened in the past. And that trauma also affects our community right now. And so what we do is we build those relationships, build that community core, so when some type of conflict triggers that past trauma, we also rely on that relationship in order to help get us past that conflict. So my background in criminal justice, I work with restorative justice on all levels, real frontline work. I also have worked in the community centers at a community level. I've also worked in various campaigns around town. I informally grew up in the criminal justice system. My mother worked there for 25 years at General Sessions, so I have an informal training. I know the people that are behind the curtain of the criminal justice system. So through relationship, I know them, and also professionally, I also have experience with the criminal justice system as well. As far as around equity issues, when it comes to building these relationships, there has been some type of harm that has been committed most of the time. There's a victim and a harmer all together. And we try to meet in the middle, build a relationship with both parties, bring them together, meet in the middle, kind of come up with some type of group values, group norms, and then rely on those group norms when a certain similar conflict happens. Policies in general. At the schools that I work in right now, we're trying to replace in-school suspension. Because what happens is students do something that has been deemed wrong, and then they are sent to a box, right? And they just sit in that box. No one has a conversation with them. No adult gives them any guidance. Nobody gives them any leeway or even finds out context about what's happening with them in that moment. And so what happens is they enter in the same situation, go into the same problem, and have the exact same conflict happen again, right? And so what we do is we intercept them, have a conversation with them, maybe link up with a mentor, come up with a strategic plan about how we can navigate schools. Also put maybe a peer mentor with them who's also navigated the same thing, and we come up with a strategic plan to where we can navigate issues, we can navigate conflicts, because conflicts are always going to happen, and we can navigate other dynamics that present in schools and try to maximize their voice, right? Give them the tools so they can advocate on behalf of themselves and lean on the adults who have the social capital in the room.
All right, then we're going to open it up now for some questions from our subcommittee. Do I have anyone with any questions?
Sure.
Yes.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good.
First, let me say I appreciate all of the extensive hard work that you have participated in. I think I've been privileged to see a little bit of it up close and personal, and I'm really happy to see all of your colleagues show up to support you like you did them. So I just very quickly, in your advocacy work, do you feel in any way that would inhibit you from being objective on this committee? Or board, excuse me.
Yeah, I don't think so. And the reason why is I think Community Oversight Board has the potential to be a place where power is shared, right? Everybody can come to the table. This is an even playing field, and we can have a conversation and try to come to a cohesive decision and a cohesive option that satisfies all parties. And so I think being in the field that I'm in right now, the frontline work that I do work with SROs. I do work with discipline. I do work with in-school suspension. I do work with principals. I do work with teachers. I play the middle all the time. Because if anybody senses that you're leaning one way or other, they just reject it immediately, right? And so in order not to do that, you kind of got to see it from all sides. You got to relate to all people. And you got to be open and honest. Because if you're not open and honest, then the people are going to reject it anyway. And if the people are going to reject it, then that relationship and what you're trying to do will never happen.
Appreciate that very much.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Sir, you've got a little less than 3 minutes before your exit. Are there any words you want to leave with us on our minds before your exit?
Yeah, I want to say that historically Nashville has always been on the forefront of when it comes to pushing social justice issues. When it comes to, we had the student sit-ins, when it just comes to certain movements like that. And I think community oversight is the next step in that evolution of especially building the community relationship, because we all want a safe community. We all want a community where people can serve, work, be heard, and feel secure in where they live and what they do. And I think this is an opportunity to make sure that those people feel, on both sides, feel more secure. Police in their jobs, they can feel more secure when they go out and do the dangerous jobs that they do, and the people can feel more secure living in high target areas.
I have a question.
Yes.
10 years from now, where do you see yourself?
And I'm going to explain why that's a hard question. I'm turning 30 next month, and a part of me never thought that I would get that far. So having to think about 40 is intense. But where I see myself is here, right, in Nashville, doing whatever needs to be done to make sure that my community that I come from is safe. I'm from 37208, which is a very high target area. And when I grew up there, it was a very high target area. Then when I moved out, I moved to a more rural area in Bordeaux, where the police are around, but it's not really a lot of people around, period. And so going back and forth between the two, I want to be here. I want to make sure that my community is served in whatever capacity that I can serve. So I want to be here, if that answers your question. Okay.
Sir, thank you so very much for coming
Thank
and
you.
sharing with us.
Thank you.
You be careful out there, and this was fantastic. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
You are awesome. Good job.
Thank you.
I'm sorry,
One more. Excuse you all. You all have a great day.
One more.
she's coming to you.
Look at that.
She's so big. You have to climb up off the floor.
She is awesome.
Good to see you again. Thanks for all you do.
This process is amazing.
Yeah, it's interesting, huh?
I'll walk somewhere. They're different.
Oh, we've had
at
some
all.
fantastic people in here.
A
Really.
lot of poker today.
And Timothy.
Many good outcomes.
He's Gideon's Army, he's our just really
Boy
strong.
Scout is
'cause they're,
coming back.
You know, doing the work.
After only one.
Where was I?
Well, no. I think his mother and I are really, well, it's,
Council lady, oh, this is my terrible, is this my terrible right? This is my terrible right.
at some point, you're supposed to drive tonight and get cold.
Oh, just out on that new page.
So you can scrub him down and
Oh, don't even, no.
put him,
I have to see the ones that I didn't do.
No. Yeah. Don't start that, John.
I'm just saying.
Next. What's the last
It's
one?
like, look.
Madam Chair, Cleo King has arrived, who was supposed to be, I think, 3 o'clock. Since you're in a break now, would you like to do that one?
Committee members, we have someone who was late and showed up. We're at a break now. Would we like to take them now or wait until after 4:10? It's up to you, committee.
Those are the two choices now, or?
I'm not on the subcommittee.
Correct.
I mean, who's taking now?
Yeah.
Okay.
It'd be less, not the full 10
Okay,
minutes.
so which one, who was it?
Cleo King.
Cleo King.
Oh, the one that was the no-show, okay.
And we have offered that still to other candidates.
Yes, well, that's what we said
Is that
today.
true?
That's what we said today was for.
Set the standard.
We said yesterday, that's what today was for.
Yeah.
So
his time will be
reduced. I just want to be sure.
Okay.
There's someone.
Well, I think maybe give them the choice.
Because you have a 4 o'clock.
Right,
Yes, so they go to a 4, yes, we'll see him now, and he just, at 4 o'clock, we'll have our 4 o'clock one.
Okay, yes. So Cherie, you just have 8 minutes.
Whatever's left is 4 o'clock.
Or this is planned.
Hi, Ms. King, how are you doing? I am fine, glad that you made it. Do you have the 3 questions that we had sent to you to talk to us about?
I think so.
Okay.
There's so much going on.
Well, they're right there. You can use that as your cheat sheet. We're going to open it up and you can talk on it however you want. You will have about 7 minutes, I believe, now because of the lateness. And if you finish before the end of that, then we'll have questions for you. But we'll let you go ahead and it's your show, ma'am.
Well, my interest is I've been active in the community ever since I moved to Nashville. I'm from East Tennessee. And I came here in a domestic violence situation and moved in East Nashville in the project. And was not, you know, where I come from, I'm not familiar with the violence and the stuff that goes on here in Nashville. But I learned to deal with it, either deal with it or die. So I did, and I tried to help people. I tried to help the families, kids, taking kids. That's what I've been doing, fostering kids. And trying to just help my fellow man, you know, help the people that needs to be helped, you know, and my background is I worked at the Salvation Army for 10 years. I volunteered 10 years there before I became an employee. People come to me and I help them with any and everything. I've helped men with the gang situation. I've been involved in that, and I've been involved in the sex trafficking. I've been involved with a lot of stuff to help young people and young men to get them on the start, and I've helped a lot to get to where they need to be. You know, a lot of drugs, you know, and it's hard, you know, when you grew up in that, in a child stage and have a mind set on doing drugs, selling drugs. It's hard, you know, and but the civil rights of it is, I was brought up in the church, and I was brought up with grandparents that believed in God and believed in the 10 Commandments, and I feel like a lot of people have got away from that, and they don't believe in God anymore, and they don't believe in anything other than just violence and just take and steal and kill. So I don't like that. I want to get back to being where you can trust God and believe in God and have faith in your fellow man, you know, and even the police, you know. I mean, I don't damn the police. I don't talk about the police. You know, I admire a lot of them, you know, in the work that they do. But the ones that, you know, they need to be understanding, you know, killing is not a way of, you know, I wouldn't want to kill somebody if they try to kill me. I try to find some other way. But if I killed them, that would be on my mind for the rest of my life. I couldn't deal with that. So, you know, I'm just here trying to help. I mean, I'm trying to give my background. I'm from a child that was abandoned in foster care. I've been raped and I've been abused. I've been molested. So I've been through a lot. And I've helped a lot of people because of the things that I've been through. And I feel like, you know, I'm not here to down nobody or criticize, just to talk and tell, try to change something or, you know.
Okay, in the 4 minutes left, we're going to open it up for some questions. And I have one question. With the skills that you offer, how do you think you can bring those to this board? How would you work with those skills to help this board?
I mean, my view of things, how I live in a neighborhood of violence. I had my car broken into, I had my car damaged, you know. I live in it every night. I'm scared to go outside, and my son is scared to, I'm scared for him to go outside. I'm just frightened. But at the same time, I feel like it's got to be something to try to stop this. It's got to be something to deal with what's going on and the killing and the violence. And, you know, it's got to be something that two heads put together. One head is hard, but if you got a lot of heads, you got to find some way to do something. You know, you can't say you don't have the resources. It's there. Just got to find it.
Yeah. Any other questions?
No,
Committee member? Okay, so you have a little less than 10 minutes now. I'm sorry, 2. Oh my goodness, 2 minutes. So is there anything that you want to leave on our mind as you exit?
Well, I mean, if you choose me or not, you know, I come from grandparents that there was Cherokee Indian and Blackfoot, and they stood for something, and they fought for something. And if you don't fight for something, you'll stand for anything. And that's what I was raised up. If you don't fight for your rights, and you just sit there, why even talk about it? Why even do anything if you're not doing anything to fight for what you think is right? So I felt like I was scared to do this, you know, I was, but I felt like, why not? I have to do this for my grandbabies. I have 6 grandkids, and 5 of them are boys. So if I didn't do this and stand up for this and something happened to one of them, then
yeah.
You know, why am I even telling you or talking to you about it if I don't do nothing?
Well, we want to thank you so very much. I'm glad that you made it. We are looking forward to, I don't know what I'm getting ready to say, because I want to say we are happy that you made it and made it in safety and everything. And thank you so very much for coming in and sharing this with us. You be careful out there driving in the rain.
They're doing a good work. Let's keep doing a good work.
Thank you, ma'am. We really appreciate you.
Yeah. No matter what the criticism is, just keep doing good work.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you very much.
Cherie, we're back on schedule now.
We are. Cherie Allen should be coming in the door right now.
When will the rest of the council, when will we get our follow-up guidance? Is that gonna be on Tuesday, or are we gonna get something over the weekend?
It was my thinking that it was Tuesday.
Okay, that's what, okay. So we all have additional homework.
over the weekend.
Is Ms. Allen not here? All right then.
So we're done?
We wait for the remainder of the 10 minutes.
Okay,
in case
yes,
she
that's
arrives
fine.
late.
Exactly, good idea. Thank you.
Thank you.
May I see if I finished? Where was it? I don't know, wherever the funny writing is.
Find it.
Well, I can't write this down.
You did.
Yes, it does not.
Room 1.
Teachers, they just can't get rid of those spiral notes, can they?
About all my people one. About one for everybody.
Oh, wow, look at you.
I said, I'm a teacher, I can't help it. We are what we are.
For some reason. Oh, really? Oh, really? Well, yeah. Okay. Here.
Because of conversations, I guess, with other council members and comments in council.
You're the first to find out. This was through Beecher.
They sought me out.
Oh, good, okay.
For some reason.
What's that?
Partly because.
No, I wasn't here quite yet. I was helping her.
That's why you're here the other night, and then we'll know that I gave.
It's good though.
Yeah. No.
Misspelling.
I'm not.
See, this.
I'm not reading the comments.
Too bad.
No, I'm reading the comments.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. Too bad. That just.
Because what's passed.
Oh, see, I didn't pay attention to this. Oh, wow, so.
You know what I was thinking?
Question.
I missed her.
Okay.
She's one of the assistants. She's worked for Tennessee State Association.
I started on. My oldest is 24. My youngest is turn 1.
Now I know why you're up at 4:30. You're up at 4:30 anyway.
Yes.
I got more to say.
Yeah, a whole lot. The appropriate time.
Madam Chair.
Yes, sir.
What is useful for you from us? So I think I've been here for all 41.
The conversation
maybe.
like we were having,
To kind of summarize
and
feelings.
I think we did that on some of them. And I have.
Because you have under your committee 42 separate candidates.
So, taken from what we had, kind of head noddings, all that kind of stuff, I will show you.
Okay. Because if it's useful to you, I was thinking of taking several categories, which
We do need to look at that, yes.
several categories such as, I know Councilman Floyd has talked around it, such as excellent finders of fact and evaluators of evidence, and then who is particularly strong under that category.
That's exactly what I think.
Or
And
who, and then diversity, youth, community, who particularly seems to excel in that.
in talking there about who we thought would be excellent Excellent. See, didn't we cover that even though we didn't put that down? See, did we look at that as we?
Okay. Because, you know, really, I'm very inspired by this 42, and I assume the other committees are equally inspired. And
Ours were fantastic. The others couldn't have had any as good.
could not have had any as good.
Excuse me, did you ask to speak in our subcommittee? Did you ask to speak in our subcommittee?
That was better the other night. This actually is pretty good, actually, on the other night.
We are waiting until, just in case, so 4:10.
Good, well, I've got something to say while we're waiting. I hope you don't mind me indulging.
I don't, as long as we know.
I want this to be heard.
Please,
so,
Mr. Subcommittee Person.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that this was a tall order, it really was, and it was a very difficult task, and I'm just so pleased and proud of the way that our chairperson handled these meetings. It was a very difficult task. You were faced with a lot, and I appreciate very much how you handled it, and I thought you did a stellar job, and I don't know that anybody could have done any better. Just wanted to say that.
Wow, I appreciate that.
I want to second that
I really appreciate that. I thought you were going to talk about how the great people, all walks of life.
They were great.
Everybody came out.
Somebody's got to talk
more
about
experienced, more younger, experienced, younger, diverse, some of everything. So even folks who came out and started, okay, so I've got a problem with people starting off negative at first, so, but even folks that came out to start off negative, they can't knock this because we had so much expertise coming out here talking.
Absolutely.
I mean, they
That
were
was all impressive.
everybody, from people who have doctors to people who don't have anything. It was fantastic.
Very good exercise.
But, yeah. So I don't mind if we look, we had kind of been like just sharing with each other, you know, oh, that, wow, okay, thank you, that type of thing to come up with. And I think you all kind of looked, yes. And so if we want to, I don't know if we need to rank or what, because that's kind of,
Is this done
I don't like
by
that.
subcommittee?
Yeah, just subcommittee.
Yeah, I don't know about a
just
ranking.
from our notes, okay, so from the notes that you all spoke about and stuff, that's where this came from. And then I'll pass some to you to. And so we had how many? 42 altogether?
Well, might be 41 with Miss Allen not here, but on that order of 41 or 42 from this committee alone.
Okay.
And it is just 7 citizens, another complexity for the committee, the council, is this disadvantaged neighborhood requirement. And then, or is the thought that we come up with our 7 and then see if they fit in the neighborhoods, or do we do the
I think that would
neighborhoods
be
first?
it, or if we just look to make sure we have it in here, because how are we gonna pick just 7 out of all of
So
those?
is each subcommittee proposing a slate?
Not really. No, we were just talking about how we were gonna do it. I think some were just having some conversations about and just talking, because really we can't come up with a sheet to rank them or anything like that, so we're not doing that, so.
So we are gonna, I think it's very important that the subcommittee does probably get together and do that, and share some level of insight as to what we're doing in their subcommittee. I'm not sure.
Can you ask Ms. Doris to come here?
Because today is a good day to do that.
Okay, no.
I think we need to
There are still.
So the only thing I would ask,
We haven't heard from yet,
as
because they were in other rooms.
an observer, is that y'all continue to let us know what y'all are doing.
Doris?
To keep the process transparent.
Well, anytime we deliberate,
Can
it has to be in a publicly noticed meeting.
So we can still come in and participate.
Okay.
I mean, and observe.
Yes.
Right, I mean, we are not to deliberate.
And we're not even talking about having a meeting,
Cameras on
we
now.
didn't say we were having a meeting, so we have not scheduled a meeting or anything. That's what you're asking about, scheduling a meeting, so us to come in. for you
Yes.
all to come into. We haven't scheduled a meeting. I don't even know if we have time to say we're gonna schedule a meeting, so.
Between now and Tuesday.
Which is Tuesday.
But what, but
I mean,
yeah, Tuesday.
But that's one of my considerations is that our, subcommittee had a quarter roughly of the candidates. and
Okay,
there are
so
many
I
others
suppose
too.
I can turn this off now because it's 4:10.
We are adjourned, thank you.
We are out. Peace out.
Well,
but there are some that candidates too, so I'm curious to read a little bit more, maybe see some of them. I don't know.
Assuming